What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 5 Saw Chapter 101 Karen's Special Team Advertisement. Axel's fist came like a landslide and a tsunami, hitting Dominic on the head. A trace of despair flashed in Dominic's heart, but it was also accompanied by powerlessness and unwillingness. He no longer had the strength to dodge. At this moment, a deep voice came to his ears. Look at the sword. He only felt that the pressure on his body suddenly disappeared, and Axel's huge figure disappeared from his eyes. He will never forget this voice, because he was defeated by this voice back then. But today this voice saved him. Is it Karen? Dominic used his last bit of strength to look in the direction of the door, and saw two people standing in the direction of the door. One of them was Zephyr with purple hair, and the other one he couldn't see clearly. Because there was a huge man kneeling in front of him, blocking his view. Karen? Dominic's voice was weak and trembling. He tried desperately to stand up, but was unable to do so due to exhaustion. Sorry, I'm late, instructor. Karen's voice was like a strong pillar, firm and warm. It's not too late, just right. Dominic slowly closed his eyes, his consciousness gradually blurring. I'll take a rest first. Dominique. Zephyr was like a gust of wind, arriving at Dominic's side in the blink of an eye. He carefully lifted Dominic up from the ground, then reached out and gently touched the tip of his nose to confirm that his breathing was still steady, and then slowly exhaled. Haha, teacher, I'm fine, I'm just a little tired. Dominic opened his eyes and tried to smile. Although his voice was weak, his eyes were powerful. Brat. What did you do to me? Axel stared angrily at the short Marine in front of him. He felt that his body was pressed by an invisible pressure and could not move. Karen's height is actually not short. He is 19 years old and already 2.6 meters tall. He is of medium height among humans. It's just that Axel doesn't seem to be a pure human being. He is more than 6 meters tall. Karen looked small in comparison. But at this time, Axel, who was more than 6 meters tall, was kneeling in front of Karen. This scene looked quite funny. Advertisement, it's more like prostrate than kneeling. Because he was almost lying on the ground in order to catch the sword in Karen's hand. After all, it doesn't matter your height difference if you catch it with your bare hands, as long as you can make sure you can catch it. Seeing that Karen didn't speak, a trace of anger and humiliation appeared on Axel's face. He tried desperately to stand up, but Karen's sword remained motionless. Damn you, Marine brat. Axel cursed angrily. Although he didn't know why, his many years of experience allowed him to make a quick judgment. Ha ha ha, you can't move either, little ones, get up here. His roar echoed in the room, and following his order, several burly men quickly rushed out and rushed toward Karen. Have you forgotten me? ZFA's figure was like a tiger, knocking down several pirates who wanted to attack Karen. A bad old man, what's there to be afraid of? Seeing that Zephyr had knocked his men to the ground, Axel couldn't help but become more and more angry, and he shouted again. You are a bunch of trash, hurry up and get lousy. Are you kidding me, old man? Zephyr twisted his wrist, a ferocious smile appeared on his face. Ah, I've seen him before. In the newspaper, he seems to be the general of Marine headquarters, Black-Armed Zephyr. A diner in the restaurant exclaimed. It's him, it's really him. I've seen him too, now I'm saved. These Marines are coming too slowly. Lousy is a real noble. Yeah, Jesse was unmoved, with a mysterious smile on his lips, and ordered to his men. Do it. The pirates who were still laughing didn't even hide as they said. They all looked at Marine with their mouths open in a playful manner. The pirates laughed, but after a while, they all stopped laughing. The green beans landed on a pirate's mouth, and the rich aroma reached his tinling guy, and he swallowed it subconsciously. Axel's men were originally very nervous. After all, there was a Marine general here to press the crowd. But when they saw that the new Marine just took out a pistol, they all couldn't help laughing. These bullets are actually edible. Don't worry, Karen looked at Jesse, who immediately ordered his men to aim their crossbows at the pirates. Major General. Advertisement in his heart. Axel is already a dead man. Believe me, teacher, don't you want to see if I have grown in the past 2 years? Zephyr was a little hesitant. He could feel that the aura of his men brought by Karen was not as strong as the pirates in front of him. What followed were those unbearable sounds. At this moment, a series of hurried and neat steps came from the door. In most cases, using thermal weapons often means that you are not strong enough. Gulu, in front of them were several students from the elite training camp, who led the way. He exclaimed, and then laughed. It turns out these Marines heard that we were hungry and wanted to treat us to dinner, ha ha ha. Of course, there are still some powerful people who are keen on thermal weapons. Bang bang bang. Lousy was no longer afraid of this kind of thing when he was 3 years old. Jesse quickly came to Karen's side, glanced at Axel kneeling on the ground, and then shifted his gaze. Because those who ate green beans all started to squirm enchantingly. Karen's smile was gentle, and her eyes shone with determination. Ha ha ha, I'm laughing so hard. Axel looked at this scene and couldn't help laughing. I thought you had some means, but it turned out to be a pistol. These pirates laughed exaggeratedly, almost to tears. Okay, I believe you. Zephyr finally nodded. Although he was still a little worried, he knew that Karen would not joke with the lives of these Marines. Following his order, the Marines acted quickly, pulling the triggers in unison, and Aomame bullets flew towards Axel's men like raindrops. Ha ha ha. Well, very good. Karen nodded, smiled at Zephyr and said, "Teacher, leave it to them. Green beans are poisonous." They were wearing pure white Marine uniforms, and they were Karen's men. "These my men can prove it to you." The situation reversed in an instant, and the diners were all discussing the change of situation. Some were happy, and some expressed dissatisfaction. Ha ha ha. There's no need to take out this gadget. Even if I stand still, you can't break my defense. Chapter 102 How to Open Your Mouth Advertisement. Clothes fragments were scattered all over the hall. These pirates seemed to have fallen into some kind of hallucination. Some seemed to imagine that they were fishes in the sea. He was lying on the ground, his legs shaking constantly, as if he was imitating the posture of a swimming fish, and he was making sounds in his mouth. Cuckoo sound. Some hands kept gesticulating in the air, as if they were painting a delicious picture, and their bodies swayed back and forth like an artist. The performances of these pirates are different. The only thing they have in common is that their body movements are exaggerated and vivid, like dancers shrouded in mist, trapped in a delicious illusion. The painting style suddenly became weird and funny. "Hey, what's wrong with you?" The pirates who were still awake looked at this scene at a loss, and they quickly pushed away these pirates who seemed to be in an illusion. "Wake up." He tried to pull the sleeve of one of the pirates, but the other pirate completely ignored him. His eyes were blurred, as if he was having an intense dialogue with his inner delicacy. At this time, they started talking nonsense according to the process. "This is the taste. It reminds me of the time when my master taught me how to stir fry. The beauty of green beans lies in its simplicity and purity. As the master said, only by controlling the heat properly can each bean shine at its best. This is the first time I have eaten such fresh fried green beans. The warm sweetness is intertwined with the faint aroma of beans, making the whole dish particularly attractive. The tenderness and crispness of the green beans seem to tell its story. Every time I chew it, it is a delicate soothing to my taste buds. The simple but mysterious fried green beans make me sigh, how pure the delicious food can be." The surrounding diners were completely unaffected by this absurd atmosphere. Although they had no idea what was going on, they couldn't help laughing when they saw this scene. "Ha ha ha, what are these pirates doing? Hey, man, look at that, he moves like a fish. Are they playing a drama to us, or is it an absurd comedy? I swear, I've never seen such a, original, design." The pirates who fell into hallucinations seemed to completely ignore the laughter around them and were still wandering in their own dreams. A pirate suddenly stood up, struck an elegant pose, and pointed his finger at the ceiling, as if he was giving the most exciting performance to an invisible audience. "The delicious taste of green beans is so pure, peefed, ha ha ha." One of the diners couldn't help laughing. He suddenly stood up and imitated his actions. The whole hall was filled with a funny atmosphere. "I think we should probably give them an award." A diner made a loud suggestion, attracting more people's attention, and a burst of warm applause broke out. "The best performance award goes to this, Mr. Mermaid." Zephyr looked at the ridiculous scene in front of him, and the corners of his mouth twitched slightly, obviously thinking about why these pirates were like this. It was all because of Karen. Although he didn't remember any exaggerated movements on the bowl of oily noodles he had eaten at Karen's earlier, he couldn't help but think about it in his mind when he saw the pirates in different postures. "Advertisement, it's okay. It's okay." Zephyr was excited, and his heart was full of joy. Fortunately, Uda reminded him at that time and let him hide and eat. Otherwise, Zephyr glared at Karen fiercely. He still remembered that Karen did not remind him. "Brad, I'll settle the score with you later." Karen felt that Zephy's eyes were full of resentment and murderous intent, and he couldn't help but mutter in his heart. "Hey, why are you looking at me? That's what you want to eat." The elite Marine recruits looked at each other. They also wanted to laugh, but looking at the serious seniors, they had no choice but to suppress their inner emotions. But it also left a seed of curiosity in them. They decided to go back and ask Zephyr about the origins of these Marines. Damn Marine. Axel was still crawling, anger and humiliation intertwined on his face. Although he grew up tall, he had a very careful heart. If he thought about it carefully, he would know why his subordinates were like this. "You all shut your mouths and don't eat those green beans." His voice was like thunder, instantly waking up the still conscious pirate. Fortunately, he brought a lot of people this time, and there were still many sober pirates. It is fully capable of issuing a new charge. The sober pirates quickly closed their mouths and communicated with their eyes. The taunting sounds in their ears made them want to find a crack in the ground and crawl in. They swore that they would never let go of these annoying bugs. Murderous intent boiled in their hearts. "Since you are already embarrassed, kill everyone present so that no one can reveal what happened today. Especially the diner who gives the award is particularly disgusting. Ha ha ha, now let's see what other methods you have." Axel's roar echoed in the air, and the sober pirates, under Axel's command, rushed towards Karen and Zephyr like a pack of enraged wolves. Karen's expression was a little weird, and a sneer flashed at the corner of his mouth. "Since he has closed his mouth, I will find a way to make you open your mouth. What's crispy and crunchy that we all love? his voice echoes in every corner. Because these pirates all kept their mouths shut, and the Marines were also very serious, as the pirates charge, the discussion among the diners also subsided. So Karen's cold voice almost appeared in the ears of everyone present. Before they had time to think about what it meant, the next moment, their mouths began to shout uncontrollably. Advertisement, good times nori. No, what am I talking about? Everyone present couldn't help but echo this question in their minds, and the atmosphere became ridiculous again. Only this time it's not just pirates anymore. In addition to the pirates and Karen who are falling into hallucinations, there is also Axel who is lying on the ground. Marine, diners, Zephyr, and even a comatose Dominic were present. Without exception, they all responded loudly to Karen's question. Dominic seemed to be talking in his sleep as he murmured loudly, "Good times nori." Only the Marines who had followed Karen for 2.5 years seemed to have grown accustomed to it. While they responded, they used their weapons to pull the triggers on the pirates who were rushing over. In an instant, several more pirates were fed with the mysterious green beans. They fell into that weird hallucination again. Damn it, shut up. Axel's lungs were about to burst with anger, and he cursed loudly. Shit, what are you doing? Is he your father? Don't respond, *hole. Karen snorted, don't respond. Do you think they did it voluntarily? It's ridiculous. He glanced at Axel coldly. He was like a conductor conducting an orchestra, and continued to ask. What brings nutritional health and care? Good times nori. What accompanies us to grow happily? Good times nori. Chapter 103 Advertising Master Advertisement. Their voices were like echoing bells, resonating throughout the hall. Although Karen has been in the East China Sea for the past 2.5 years, he has also been unable to gain reputation. With a thought, he opened the reputation system in his mind. Target reputation. 5,847,781 10 millionths. Possessing skills. Unparalleled skills, 100% chance of being caught with nothing. Gourmet, fisherman, advertising master. These are the 5 abilities he currently has. The advertising guru also did not give a detailed introduction. Karen has only explored this method of use in the past 2 years. That is, as long as you shout out those classic advertising slogans from your previous life, within a certain range, everyone will pick up the next sentence. This range depends on the volume of Karen's voice, and it cannot be avoided regardless of whether she can hear or not, even if her ears are blocked, or even if she is born deaf. This skill should be very powerful in the magical world, but unfortunately this is not the kind of world that requires chanting to release skills, so it seems a bit useless. Another shortcoming of this ability is that it cannot distinguish between friend and foe. Unable to control specific people, as long as it is within this range, it will be affected. Karen's Q&A continues. Palace Jade Wine, 180 cups. Which company has the best excavator technology? Looking for Lan Shang from Shandong, China. The delicious green beans fascinate me. The sound of advertisements and praise for green beans filled the whole scene. Axel felt bad. After all, among all the people present, except for Karen, the instigator, he was the only one who was not affected, so he could see it more clearly. He now regrets very much why he came to this restaurant. Don't be afraid. Cover your mouth. Seeing that his little brothers began to fall into hallucinations one by one, he felt extremely annoyed and quickly gave instructions loudly. These people are also under control, as long as they don't eat green beans. I have to say that Axel's idea was indeed very good. These pirates immediately covered their mouths obediently. Covering his mouth, he yelled and rushed. Advertisement. Charge for 5 minutes, 2 hours on the phone. Their voices were angry and humiliated. As expected, Aomame couldn't see *M into their mouths. Axel shouted excitedly. Yes, that's it, give it to Lousy. It's ashes. Karen was interrupted by Zephyr in the middle of reading. Stop reading, let me go, I'll give them a good time. Zephyr looked at the Marines who were also responding loudly, with sweat dripping down his forehead. If you continue to think like this, Marine's reputation will also be damaged. Ahem, I've seen what your Marine is capable of, just leave it to me. Karen felt a little regretful and smiled awkwardly. But I still have a lot of advertisements that I haven't said yet? Don't say it. Zephyr had a dark face. Karen nodded disappointedly. Okay. However, a coldness flashed in his eyes, and he chuckled. This doesn't require the teacher to take action, I will do it myself. As he spoke, he turned his gaze to Axel who was lying on the ground and said calmly. Do you feel that you can't use all your abilities, and if I don't have devil fruit abilities, I'm no match for you? Axel let out a poof, and said angrily, if you have the ability, let me go and fight Lousy openly, but do you dare? His tone was mocking and disdainful. For a kid like this, he can hit 100 enemies without even taking a breath. With a bang sound, Axel's body was like a cannonball, hitting the back hard. He looked around at the chaotic scene around him and felt dizzy, not because of the physical damage caused by Karen kicking his head, but because of the mental damage caused by being angry. He is a man with a very high self-esteem. He would rather be killed by Marine now than suffer such humiliation in front of everyone. It turns out that this is the real method of use by gourmets, who said that those with animal-type fruit abilities are not animals. Karen imagined meeting the beast pirates led by Kaido in the future. Advertisement, of course, it was just a thought. Karen would not eat these strange things. Pig killing. The truth about food, whole pig feast. This is still a pirate group. Aren't they all precious ingredients for the future? Karen looked at this scene and froze in place as if he was frightened by Axel. No, yes, as well as, then, he raised his head and revealed an irrepressible smile. He rolled in the air and hit a table in the hall. The tableware and food on the table flew away instantly, and the scene was chaotic. There is no one with animal-type devil fruit abilities that I have ever met. Just thinking about it makes me drool. As he spoke, he bent down suddenly, and black bristles began to appear vaguely on his body. In the next moment, he turned into a huge wild boar, exuding a strong aura. Haha. Do you want to stimulate the generals? Okay, then I will let you go and let you see the gap between you and the strong ones. Because the moment Axel turned into a wild boar, several pig knowledge and recipes suddenly appeared in his mind. The fate of pigs. From farm to fork. Lousy is the leader of the wild boar pirates. He is the owner of the animal system, the pig fruit, and the wild boar form. Kid, that's good. Axel was filled with anger and got up from the ground. Postpartum care of sows. Although Karen wiped out many pirate groups in the East China Sea, there were not many who were truly powerful. I didn't expect that Karen would be given such a big surprise just after arriving at New World. No, not yet at New World, just at the door of New World. The black mane shimmered under the light, and his fierce eyes looked directly at Karen, as if he wanted to tear him apart. Thinking about the crazy boar pirates from South Blue all the way to the Sabodi Islands, they encountered many battles, big and small, and there were moments between life and death, but they had never encountered such a humiliating and funny battle. Karen removed the hidden edge in his hand and kicked Axel on the head. The art of butchery. Where tradition meets modernity. If it's an animal, it's food. A complete collection of 100 pork recipes. Brachiosaurus, mammoth, saber-toothed tiger, Allosaurus, triceratops. In other words, whenever he faces someone with an animal fruit ability, he will have very superb killing experience. Chapter 104 Methodology of Killing Pigs Advertisement. Karen stared at Axel with burning eyes, making him feel uncomfortable all over. Damn you kid. What's that look in your eyes? Axel only felt that Karen's eyes had changed. This look made him feel chilled, and he felt a little more fearful for no reason. Just like a piece of food placed on the chopping board, the chef is looking at where to cut it. Isn't he really that perverted? Axel secretly speculated in his heart, anger and fear intertwined. Haha, it seems that you are not only a pirate, but also a delicious ingredient. Karen smiled slightly, his eyes shining brightly. Axel's mane stood up, not knowing whether it was because of anger or fear, and he roared. Kid, you are playing with fire. He decided not to hesitate anymore and vowed to tear this annoying kid in front of him to pieces. He began to accelerate. In the wild boar form, he exuded a strong momentum. His huge body was like a mountain, and he suddenly rushed towards Karen, carrying a strong shockwave. However, Karen did not flinch, but smiled slightly, with a hint of amusement in her eyes. While he easily dodged Axel's attack, he said to himself, there are many ways to cook pork, for example, stew, boil, roast, and fry, but before preparing to cook, the most important thing to do is to kill the pig first. Pigs are often killed with a very long butcher knife, because if it is too short, the heart of the pig cannot be reached. As for the zangfeng in my hand, it's okay, it's not too short. Karen stared at Axel, who was rushing towards him, with a burning gaze, as if he was sizing up a piece of meat about to be put into the pot. The process of killing a pig is actually very simple. Just find the right place and cut it with one knife, and you're done. Karen's pupils became sharp in an instant, the sword in his hand flashed coldly in the sun, and the tip of the sword pointed at Axel's heart. As he chanted in a low voice, the sword struck out like a rainbow. Luxon Thorn. At this moment, time seemed to freeze, and Axel felt an invisible pressure coming towards him. It pushed straight into his heart, making him unable to move. Although he tried his best to avoid it, the stab was like lightning, and it was so fast that he could not react at all. Peefed. The sharp blade pierced Axel's chest, and blood instantly poured out, staining his body red. How is this possible? I used hockey. Axel's eyes were full of shock and disbelief. He looked down at his chest, blood gurgling out, and all the strength in his body seemed to be withdrawn in an instant. The huge pain made him almost unable to stand. It's nothing impossible, because my domineering power is superior to yours. Karen said coldly. Advertisement, to deal with a guy like you, I don't even need my full strength. It's been too long, so please leave. Thunder half-moon slash. The sword in Karen's hand suddenly erupted, and the air seemed to be torn apart, causing strong vibrations. The sword light flashed, and with unparalleled power, it rushed straight towards Axel. Damn it. Axel was shocked, but he was unable to resist anymore. His body was so oppressed that he could not move. He could only watch helplessly as the lightning-like sword light approached. Crack. There was a deafening loud noise, as if the entire space was torn apart. The sword light flashed in front of him, and the air was filled with electricity, tearing apart all obstacles in an instant. I'm not willing to give in. Axel shouted from the bottom of his heart, anger and despair intertwined, the power in his heart burning like a fire, trying to struggle, but to no avail. At that moment, time seemed to freeze, Axel's consciousness gradually blurred, and the world in front of him became blurred and distorted. Boom! Axel's body flew backwards and fell hard from the sky, causing a mess. The seats and floor tiles around him were shaken to pieces, and the air around him was filled with a strong smell of blood. His body hit the ground hard, making a dull sound. Then, everything calmed down. Boss! Axel's younger brothers were so frightened that their faces were ashen and their hearts were broken. They looked at each other and saw fear in each other's eyes. One of the boys' eyes moved slightly and he roared, "Fight with them and avenge the boss." After saying this, he turned around and fled to the rear. Ridiculous. Karen looked at him coldly, and with a wave of his hand, a sword light flew towards the man's head. "If you don't want to die, give up resistance," the cold voice echoed throughout the hall. Julang. As the first pirate put down his weapon, all the pirates also gave up their resistance. They know that once their boss dies, they are no longer qualified to resist. Ho ho ho, what a wonderful showdown. What's so exciting? Isn't this crushing? Haha, this Marine is so handsome. Advertisement. Who is he? As the pirates surrendered, there were cheers from the diners. Although the pirates no longer showed much fear after they fell into the hallucination of delicious food, when they were actually rescued, they were still very happy. The way these Marines fight is really unique. This is the first time I've seen such a funny battle. It makes me feel like I can do it too. But I'm really curious about what that good time seaweed was. And Yuya wine and excavators. Karen's mouth twitched slightly, but there was nothing he could do about it. His fighting style was so high profile. Ahem, Jesse, take them all away. Yes, Major General. Jesse waved his hand, and a group of Marines swarmed up and took away the pirates who gave up resistance. Dominic, instructor? A Marine student asked nervously, his eyes full of concern. The students from the Marine Elite training camp also gathered around, and they carefully placed Dominic on the bed frame made of tables. Seeing that the battle was finally over, Zephyr also walked over. Chief Instructor. The students shouted in unison, with a hint of anxiety in their voices. Well, don't worry, he's fine. He's just in a temporary coma. He'll be fine after putting on a bandage. Zephyr comforted them in a low voice, with a firm yet gentle tone, as if giving them a shot in the arm. Hearing Zephy's words, they also felt relieved. One of the students looked at Karen and asked quietly. Instructor, who is he? Zephyr smiled, his tone full of pride. He is also my student and your senior, Karen. He's so awesome. The student couldn't help but admire, with admiration shining in his eyes. I've never seen anyone like him. He is the student I am most proud of. Not only his strength, but also his marine spirit is what you should learn the most. Zephyr said with a smile, and his tone was full of praise for Karen. Yes, instructor. All the students nodded, their admiration for Karen growing in their hearts. At this time, Karen also came over and happened to hear Zephy's praise for himself. If the marine spirit you are talking about means killing pirates and disobeying orders, then it is true. He blushed and touched his nose. Then, he narrowed his eyes slightly, walked to Marine, a bull-headed man, and said in a deep voice. May I have your name? Chapter 105 Shocky's Ripoff Bar? Advertisement. Virgo was stunned for a moment, then said his own name. He looked at Karen with admiration and replied excitedly. My name is Virgo. Sure enough, it was him. Although his temperament was different from that of Virgo in Karen's memory, his facial features were still very similar. Karen's eyes flashed, and he hesitated whether to kill him now. However, even if Karen stabs his head, there is no reason why he is not good at killing his fellow soldiers, not to mention that he is still an elite student in an elite training camp. Strictly speaking, he is also ZFA's student. He would tell Sang Guo his identity when he went back. He believed that Sang Guo would be able to find out his identity. An undercover agent who knows his identity can bring more value to Marine. And now that Virgo is here, as long as he is still in the training camp, he can keep monitoring and controlling him. With his murderous intention restrained, Karen asked as if unintentionally. Where are you from? North Blue, any family? No, Virgo answered fluently, with respect and admiration for Karen shining in his eyes. No wonder she is an undercover agent. With your acting skills, you should be the best performer tonight. Karen secretly cursed in her heart. As the question and answer ended, Karen turned her attention to Dominic lying on the hospital bed. Virgo lowered his head slowly, with both fear and doubt in his eyes. Although Karen's murderous intention was only revealed for a moment, he was still caught. Why would he show murderous intent to me? Could it be that he knew my true identity, but I didn't reveal any clues at all? He didn't understand whether he had any flaws or whether Karen had extraordinary insight. Maybe I feel wrong, otherwise it makes no sense at all. Virgo comforted himself secretly, but felt a little uneasy in his heart. You brat, you're doing well. Zephyr smiled and patted Karen on the shoulder. I can tell you haven't used your full strength yet. There is no way, this pirate is too weak. I thought the pirate who dared to cause trouble in Sabodi would have 2 tools, but I didn't expect him to be so weak. Karen shook his head in disappointment and smiled sadly. Advertisement, actually, I don't know what my strength is. After all, I have stayed in the East China Sea for too long. Haha, how about it, do you want me to practice with you? Zephyr was eager to try, and he was also curious about Karen's strength. Although he said that he was old, his muscles were still as strong as iron and he exuded a strong aura. Karen was a little moved, but he still shook his head. What? You think I'm old? Zephyr twisted his body and glanced at Axel, who was carried away by several Marines. He had not forgotten Axel's previous ridicule to him. No, no, Karen waved his hands repeatedly, and then a mysterious smile appeared on his lips. There are more suitable opponents here. Besides, that guy is also a good swordsman. Sabodi Islands, Area 13. Karen and Zephyr stood in front of a bar. Zephyr looked up casually, and Shaky's rip-off bar came into view. Right here. Well, yes. Are you sure that one PIECE's right arm, Silbaz Rayleigh, is in this little bar? I'm not sure now, but I should be able to confirm it soon. Karen remembered that Rayleigh liked to gamble everywhere, and he couldn't guarantee whether he was in the bar or not, but his wife was here. Pushing the gate of opening, Karen and Zephyr looked around. Perhaps because of the day, the business didn't seem to be very good, and there were only a few scattered people drinking. Shaky laughed softly, with a hint of charm in her laughter. She sighed with pretense of regret and said, "Oh my, what a pity. Because I'm a Marine and he's a pirate. First didn't expect Marine to come to a place like mine. It's such a rare visitor." Karen and Zephyr attracted their attention as soon as they entered, because Karen and Zephyr did not have time to change their uniforms. Shaky skillfully picked up a bottle of wine, shook it gently, and poured the clear liquid into the glass. It turns out he is a gambler. Her movements are elegant and smooth, as if every movement has been carefully planned. Really? That's a coincidence. I also like mature older sisters. Advertisement, actually, it doesn't matter even if you get married. He blinked, the corners of his mouth raised slightly, and there was a playful look in his eyes. There was a hint of mischief and teasing in Karen's voice. Especially areas 1 to 29, this is a real lawless place filled with all kinds of dark industries. The Tianlong people have long regarded the Sabodi Islands as their own backyard, and will not allow Marine to move around here at will. Unless the celestial dragons are attacked, it is difficult to see Marine. This is why Marine came so slowly after Dominic was attacked. They need to apply for it in layers. Really, then it seems that the one in my family will like you very much. Shaky was sitting at the bar, drinking a drink alone. When he saw Karen and Zephyr arriving, he was slightly startled, and then smiled. That's not possible. Although my husband is often away from home, I love him very much, sister. Why are they here? Shouldn't they be in area 60 to 69? Marine? What's a pity? Karen put the glass of wine in front of her eyes and shook it. It's a pity that I got married a long time ago. And it seems that the position is not low. Karen wanted to reach out and grab Shaky's wrist, but she nimbly dodged it. Why? Karen thought that he had also successfully earned a large sum of money through gambling skills. Karen came to the bar and found a seat to sit down. Actually, I'm also a gambler, but I don't think he will like me. Why, aren't you welcome? Of course you are welcome. I like young handsome guys the most. It's such an enviable love, Karen said with some regret. I'm very curious about what kind of person he is to be loved by his sister. Therefore, Marines usually only move between number 60 and number 69. Due to the complicated forces of the Sabodi archipelago, it is not only close to Marines' headquarters, Marinevando, but also very close to the Holy Land of the Celestial Dragons, Marijoya. He, how should I say, is a reassuring guy. Shaky looked like a happy little girl, with a sweet smile on her face, and then said with emotion. But sometimes, I feel lonely, especially when he often goes gambling without me. When the wine glass was almost 80% full, she stopped what she was doing, gently placed the glass on the bar, and then pushed it in front of Karen. Chapter 106 Pluton Rayleigh advertisement shock flashed across Shaky's face for a moment, then returned to normal. Oh, you know him? Like thunder. It's really sad, little brother, I didn't expect you came here for him. Originally? Now that I see my sister, I can't even walk. Ahem. Zephyr finally couldn't listen anymore. He tapped hard on the bar with his finger and said in a deep voice. Rayleigh is really here. Karen looked at Shaky, who nodded, shook his head, and chuckled. Not now. Zephyr continued to ask. Where is he? I don't know, maybe it's a casino, maybe I'm drunk on the street. Shaky looked normal, not worried about Rayleigh at all. Then, she took out a cigarette from her arms, lit it, and slowly exhaled a cloud of white smoke. So, are you looking for him? Karen pushed the empty cup in front of Shaky and said calmly. Sabodi is huge, so I choose to wait here. Rayleigh came back. He smelled of alcohol and his face was flushed. He was originally a calm person. When he was young, he wandered around because his home was burned down. By chance, he met Gold D. Roger, who had not yet debuted. After the young Gold D. Roger introduced himself, he asked Rayleigh, do you want to work with me to turn the world upside down? Although he thought the idea was ridiculous at the time, he eventually formed a pirate group with Roger and became Roger's first crew member. Later, his captain became One Piece, and he became One Piece's right arm. Known as Pluton, Rayleigh. Unfortunately, this life did not last long. With the surrender of One Piece Roger, the original One Piece team also disbanded. He became an ordinary coding craftsman, living a dreamy life on the Sabaody Islands. Pushing open the bar door, Rayleigh saw two Marines sitting at the bar. One of them. Marine was chatting with Shaki. The atmosphere seemed harmonious because he could hear Shaki's cheerful laughter. The other one sat quietly aside, holding a cigar in his hand. Occasionally he would add a few words, but most of the time he remained silent. Shaki covered his mouth and chuckled. Advertisement. Haha, I like whiskey because whiskey usually has a higher alcohol content and gives people a warm feeling. Really? It turns out you like to drink strong alcohol? And you? I'm not usually a drinker. Then when do you like to drink? While drinking. You're so funny. Shaki smiled slightly and seemed to have just noticed Rayleigh's arrival. She greeted happily. Hey, you're back. Rayleigh burped, raised her eyebrows slightly, her eyes wandered between Karen and Shaki, and finally landed on Karen. What a handsome young man. No wonder I can chat with Shaki so well. His tone seemed a bit amused and a bit teasing. Thank you, you are also handsome. Old man. Karen stood up and looked at Rayleigh with a smile. Ha ha ha. Shaki laughed exaggeratedly, laughing for more than 10 seconds, and then calmed down slightly, his eyes filled with joy. I just said you guys would get along. Rayleigh couldn't help but laugh and patted Karen on the shoulder. It seems that very interesting things happened while I was away. However, the term, old man, is not a good one. It makes me feel old. A lot of. You're not young anymore. Shaki rolled his eyes. That's true, I am indeed no longer young. Rayleigh sighed with emotion. Now is no longer our time. Zephyr stood up. Yes, now is a generation of young people, and we are no longer young. Zephyr? It's me. You are getting old too, you can still move. So are you here to catch me today? Yes and no? What's the meaning? It means you have to fight with me before I can decide whether to arrest you or not. Karen interjected. Rayleigh held her forehead, pretending to be aggrieved and said. Oh, aren't you a bully? You are also a drunk old man. You can also refuse. Really? Real? What are the consequences? Karen smiled. He leaned into Rayleigh's ear and whispered. You don't want to either. I agree. Advertisement, wise choice. Rayleigh's expression was very relaxed, not like he was about to engage in a life-and-death duel. After all, he had experienced too much. His heartbeat accelerated, adrenaline surged in his blood, and the excitement of battle made every cell in his body scream. The air seemed to be torn apart by the momentum of this sword, and the surrounding trees seemed to be trembling at this moment. No, just think of it as a fun and entertaining event. Conquerors instantly wrapped around his blade, and black-purple thunder and lightning sizzled on the blade, bringing an invisible pressure. Curry stick. Crescent moon clashes. You surprise me. I didn't expect you to be able to do this at such a young age. Let's do something real. Jackfruit chops more. The two forces collided in the air, instantly erupting into a huge sound, as deafening as thunder. Rayleigh shook his head and dodged dangerously. The sword blade passed by his side. The sword light drew a gorgeous trajectory and disappeared in the dense forest in an instant. Karen shouted, his sword moving like a rainbow, facing Rayleigh's blade. Karen and Rayleigh stood opposite each other, and beside them were Zephyr and Shaki who were watching the game. Rayleigh smiled slightly, raised the blade high, and turned into lightning in the next second, running towards Karen. Karen yelled excitedly. The light of the knife flickered in the sunlight, like a black-purple meteor, heading straight for Karen's heart. Please update. Sabaody Islands, in the uninhabited jungle. Karen's heart tightened. Rayleigh's attack came like a violent storm, with an invisible sense of oppression. Karen looked at Rayleigh with envy. Conquerors, what a powerful power, but it's a pity that he still can't master this power. Rayleigh's voice was low and magnetic, and he drew the saber from his waist. The future will definitely be exciting. Very good. You really didn't disappoint me. Karen withdrew his hidden edge, a hint of admiration flashed in his eyes, but then he became serious again. But this is just a warm-up. Karen felt that the sword in his hand was shaken by a powerful force and almost came out of his hand. As expected of Pluton Rayleigh, this was the first time in the past few years that Karen felt the distance between life and death. As soon as he finished speaking, Karen took a step forward suddenly, and the sword in his hand drew a shining arc, approaching Rayleigh. Karen's burst of power made Rayleigh put away his relaxed expression. He didn't expect that the little marine in front of him could explode with such terrifying momentum. Don't you need to sober up? Compared to the curry stick that needed to be charged up 2 years ago, he can now use it at any time. Be careful. Karen asked. Chapter 107. It's essential to be on guard against others. Advertisement. Karen put on black casual clothes and walked out of Shaki's room. Pushing the gate of opening, Zephyr, Rayleigh and Shaki were chatting away. You really don't want to arrest me? Rayleigh poured a glass of wine into his mouth, but his raised hand was shaking slightly, and a white bandage could be vaguely seen around his wrist from his cuffs. He was injured, although not seriously. You want to go to jail? It was not Zephyr who said this, But Shaki. She glared at Rayleigh angrily, her tone somewhat dissatisfied. I have eaten a lot of food since I grew up, but I have never had prison food. Then go ahead, I just want to change my life. Shaki stretched out and drew a graceful arc. Rayleigh smiled slightly, shaking the wineglass in his hand gently, and said in a relaxed tone. That's not possible, I haven't had enough wine yet. At this time, Zephyr interjected. The city's liquor supply is sufficient. Rayleigh's smile froze on his face, and then he said with a sneer. Ha ha ha, forget it, I'm used to the wine here, the wine in other places doesn't taste good. Then, he cleared his throat to try to hide his embarrassment and asked the question again. Ahem. So you really don't want to arrest me? Have you retired? Hearing Rayleigh's question, Zephyr nodded seriously. I'm considering it. If there was no Karen, if there was no Uda, maybe he would really work in Marine until he died. But now, his life has meaning again, and he wants to live for himself again. As Karen said, not for justice, but for yourself. However, it is still too early to retire now. He still has to devote his last efforts to Marine, and at least train a monster-level general for Marine. I won't arrest you because Karen doesn't want to arrest you. Zephyr answered Rayleigh's first question. Rayleigh asked curiously. Why? Because it makes no sense. I've been underestimated. Why is it meaningless to say that I am also the deputy of One Piece? Rayleigh is like a cat whose tail has been stepped on. Sometimes people are like this. Although he may not care about his identity, when you deny his value, he will react extremely violently. Karen said it makes more sense to keep you here. I can't see the point in me staying here. This is very close to Marine headquarters. So what? So, it will be convenient for him to come here. Convenient? Rayleigh's eyes narrowed slightly. Suddenly he stood up and stared at Zephyr and murmured. You want me to be his sparring partner? Zephyr did not speak, but poured a glass of wine on his own. Do you know who I am? No, who I am? Advertisement? Silbaz Rayleigh. Wrong. Now it was ZFA's turn to be confused. Then who are you? One Piece's right wrist, Pluton Rayleigh, so what? So you let a pirate be Marine's sparring partner? Wrong. Zephyr corrected. It was Karen who asked you to be his sparring partner, not me. Don't you mean the same thing? No, he is him and I am me. Then can I kill you? He is my favorite disciple. Zephyr drank a glass of wine and smiled. He is also Marine's hope for the future. You. Rayleigh sat back down weakly, like a wilted eggplant. Oh, my life is really hard. Even at this age, I still have to fight and kill young people. I think it's pretty good. Shaki crossed his legs and swung his feet, with a lazy smile on his lips. This way you won't be able to leave for too long. Rayleigh collapsed on the table, speechless. Ahem. Karen walked to the bar, coughed lightly, and said with a smile, actually, you don't hate this kind of fighting, do you? Rayleigh raised her head, rolled her eyes, and retorted. No, I hate it very much. Oh, what do you mean? Oh, I know it. So, are you going to let me go? Rayleigh looked at Karen expectantly. Oh, I mean I got it. As expected of a master and a disciple, he is equally annoying. Oh. Karen walked to the bar, sat next to Zephyr, and the two looked at each other. Zephyr asked. How do you feel? Karen lifted up his shirt, and a circle of white bandages came into view. He could faintly see the hideous scars inside. He smiled bitterly and said. I can still move. Rayleigh is indeed very powerful. I am not his opponent yet, however, it is not without gains. I have a deeper understanding of the sight color and the arm color. For example, I can briefly meet the future. Karen tried to pull out a cigarette, then remembered that these were not his clothes, that his clothes had been torn in the battle. You should have a lieutenant general now. No, the level of a lieutenant general or above. Zephyr nodded with satisfaction. Very good, then I can safely let you go to the new world. Advertisement. Rayleigh pricked up her ears and her eyes lit up. Is that the fortress? G1. Rayleigh's face immediately drooped, because G1 was also very close to the Sabodi Islands. Karen's mind moved. G1? That is the branch that will be swapped with Malinfondo in the future. The new Malinfondo from the future. I didn't expect that Sengoku would arrange for me to go there. It seems that Marine really values me. Being close to Marine headquarters means that he can apply for assistance from above at any time. Okay. Karen nodded. This will have to wait until. Zephyr said halfway, but Karen understood what he meant. He should wait until he went to see Vegapunk before coming down to make an appointment. That's fine, after all. Karen stayed in Donghai for 2 full years just to see him. Understood. Leave? Zephyr stood up. I'm going to go to Fishman Island. Now. Zephyr frowned. Marine doesn't have to go downstairs to go to New World. I know, I'm not going to the New World, I'm just going to see someone off. Mermaid? Yes, I promised someone. Delica did not choose to stay in Windmill Village, but returned to Malinfondo with Karen. She had been away from Mermaid Island for too long, and she also wanted to go back and see it. Now she happens to be on Karen's warship, for the same reason she came here. So Karen decided to choose a better day and send Delica back to Fishman Island on this trip. Shaki's pupils paused for a moment on Rayleigh, then added with a chuckle. Haha, just in time. Rayleigh is the ferry master, you can ask him to help you with coding. I'm not going to help this brat. Rayleigh stood up. Karen nodded, stood up, and said calmly, no need. Shaki wondered. What, don't you believe that one PIECE's deputy is a coding master? Actually, I was surprised when he wanted to stay and choose to be a coder, but I didn't expect that his skills were quite good. No, I believe he is an excellent coder, then why? It's essential to be on guard against others. Rayleigh. Chapter 108 Going to the Sea with Delika Advertisement. Sir Major General, your warship has been plated. A young Marine soldier stepped forward and reported respectfully, please check. Well, good. In the end, Karen did not let Rayleigh code his warship, but chose his own people who were more trustworthy. In fact, Marine usually does not choose to go to Fishman Island because the risks are too great. Regardless of technical issues, if you happen to encounter a Super Poseidon type, or if you are unlucky and encounter a volcanic eruption, the ship will be annihilated on the way to Fishman Island. Karen once asked Zephyr why he didn't send troops to guard the Saboti Islands or Fishman Island to completely cut off the Grand Route. The answer was, it can't be done. Marine has no way to clean up Saboti land, let alone send troops to guard Fishman Island. Let's not talk about the Saboti Islands. The forces here are complicated. Marine only has the right to garrison here, but its bigger role is to protect the Tianlong people. This is especially true for Fishman Island, which is a franchised country in itself, and there are still various kinds of discrimination between fishmen and humans. The same goes for Marine. They actually also capture mermaids, because in their perception, mermaids and fishmen are not human beings at all. Moreover, there are giant Poseidon species all around the Fishman Island. The coating of the ships heading to the Fishman is actually very fragile. Once attacked, it will be easily wiped out. It can be said that as soon as you go into the sea, the power of Marine's life and death is in the hands of the fishmen. Maybe the elite team is fine, but for the large army, this danger is fatal. Based on the above considerations, Marine cannot send troops to the sea. Even Karen was a little frightened. Although he knew that he was not a devil fruit user, it was not sure whether he could withstand the pressure of the sea at a depth of 10,000 meters below the sea level. However, he still decided to go there himself. One is the agreement, and the other is that he also wants to see the scene under the deep sea. But he won't lead his men there to capture Shanks like he did last time, knowing that there is danger. After spending time together for the past 2 years, he and these Marines have developed more bonds and a greater sense of responsibility. Major General. Jesse saluted, you really don't need us to go? No need. Karen shook his head, then he patted Jesse on the shoulder and said with a smile, you go back with Teacher Zephyr first. I won't make fun of my own life. Don't forget that Delika is a mermaid. She can save me even if I'm in danger. If I take you with me, I'm afraid she won't be able to do anything. Jesse thought for a while and nodded. Okay, here, take it. Advertisement. Zephyr handed over 2 pieces of white paper, one large and one small. What? Karen was a little confused, then thought of something, and he got a little excited. Is this a life card? The life card is a kind of paper that represents the owner's vitality. It is neither afraid of fire nor water. People often tear it up and give it to their relatives or friends who are about to be separated. The torn papers will attract each other. The life card will shrink when the owner is weak, and will return to its original size when the owner recovers health. Well, the big one is yours, and the small one is mine. Zephyr warned. Be careful yourself, the sea is no better than the sea. I will, teacher. Zephyr took a deep look at Karen and then returned to the warship. At this time, Delika said with a complex expression, actually, you don't need to go down. Just put me at the beach and I can go back by myself. She understood that Karen was actually afraid that she would be in danger, so she went back with her. In fact, as long as the mermaids did not expose their identities in other places, they could usually live peacefully. The area with the highest incidence of being captured as slaves is actually the rise from Fishman Island to the Saboti Land Islands. Because at that time they usually didn't know how scary humans are and didn't know how to disguise themselves. Therefore, there are many slave ships gathering on the way to Fishman Island and Saboti Land Islands. Why, I'm not welcome. Karen smiled and said, I promised that guy to send you safely to Fishman Island. It's not that, it's just, the relationship between Fishman Island and humans is not good, I'm worried. Worried they will attack me? Yes, I'm so touched. She completely forgot that she actually didn't have this setting at all. In fact, in a sense, he can also conquerors, but this kind of conquerors is only for animals. Karen complained in his heart. Karen exaggeratedly wiped away tears. Delika nodded, it was true. When she first got along with Karen, she was still very nervous at first, for fear that if she was not careful, she would be. Delika was non-committal. Advertisement, especially when facing Uda, he would sing to Uda, although he often sang out of tune, and he would also tell Uda many interesting stories, although she always felt that those stories were very false. Karen used life return to adjust his body movements and retorted. After confirming that his gourmand had a bonus to those with animal devil fruit abilities, he suddenly had the idea to let Delika transform into a mermaid and experiment in front of him. She often thinks, love is really terrible, I won't do this. Yeah? How can you tell that I am actually excited and excited? The aura coming from him made Delica shudder. Small boats are more suitable for them than big boats. Believe. Delica gave him a funny look. You don't believe it? But after getting along with him for a long time, she found that Karen was a very naive person. The warship Karen was on was not big, just a little bigger than Hawkeye's coffin. It was a terrifying look at seeing precious ingredients. She could only feel it when Karen was cooking, but it was not so strong at that time. Delica smiled and said, I'm more worried about you turning them into ingredients. This is because there are only 2 of them. No, there is only 1 person and a mermaid. As a result, as Karen expected, when Delica turned into a mermaid, he had many more fish recipes in his mind. Thank you for your rewards and encouragement, please update. Especially the story about the mermaid who chose to become a bubble for a human who didn't love herself. Ahem, don't worry, I'm very friendly to Fishman Island. Karen touched his nose awkwardly, and he also thought of the previous experiment on the warship. I didn't expect you to be nervous too. ... As the boat slid towards the water, Karen was also nervous. After all, this was his first time. In short, Karen is very easygoing and friendly to his own people, his own fish. Chapter 109 Entering Fishman Island Advertisement. 5,000 meters under the sea. Boom. A huge figure let out a painful cry. It was a huge sea beast with a length of 500 meters. The hidden edge in Karen's hand pointed at the sea beast, and a huge flying slash passed through, splitting the sea beast in half with terrifying force. Blood instantly dyed the area red, followed by various unknown fish, eating away at its huge body. Karen put away the hidden edge, looked at Delica, and asked, How far is it? Delica closed her eyes, felt the pressure on the bottom of the sea, and then replied, It should be about half the distance. At this time, Delica's lower body has turned into an elegant fishtail, shining with silver blue light, reflecting the colorful colors of Madara in the sea water. Transforming into this form on the seabed seems to make her very comfortable. I'm curious how you breathe freely under the sea. I don't know, just breathe if you want to. Oh, are you ready to come out after you go back? I think so. After all, there is no real sun under the sea, Delica said with a sad look in her eyes. Only when you feel the warmth of the sun yourself can you feel the beauty of it. Karen could see that she really liked land. Then why do you insist on coming back? Because there are many mermaids under the sea who yearn for the outside world. Most of them have never felt the warmth of the sun. I want to tell them my true experiences on land over the years. Karen frowned. You should know this is not a good thing. But I also know that this is what mermaids long for, and there are many people working hard to return to land. Karen knew who she was talking about, and Princess Odahime of Fishman Island was one of them. There is also the Fishman Fisher Tiger. They are the tragic heroes of Fishman Island, and they all sacrificed their lives to make the fishmen better. Of course, they should still be alive now. Do you want to change this? Change? Delica shook her head slightly, with a trace of confusion in her eyes. I don't want to change anything, and I don't have the ability to change. I just want to tell them the truest side of the land, instead of being trapped in the opposite direction, in the unknown fantasy. Karen didn't comment. After all, he was not a fishman, and he didn't have deep feelings about the plight of Fishman Island. He just wanted to protect the people around him. As the ship sank, Karen felt that her vision was gradually getting brighter. Advertisement. He realized that this was the light coming from the giant tree, Sun Tree Eve, growing near Fishman Island. This also means that we are very close to Fishman Island at this time. Karen could clearly feel that there were more fish nearby, and it seemed that they also liked the light. He cheered up and stood up. Soon, an island surrounded by a huge double-layered bubble membrane appeared in front of Karen's eyes. His eyes lit up, and he controlled the ship and dived in. The moment he entered, the coating covering the exterior of the boat was instantly peeled off. He subconsciously took a deep breath, only to find that there was no seawater at his current location. The next moment, the ship instantly fell downwards without the support of seawater. Karen quickly used moonwalk to stay in the air layer, while not forgetting to hold Delica in his arms. What's going on? Karen saw the boat accompanying him on the dive hit the protective layer below and become torn apart. Delica did not break free from Karen's arm, but rolled her eyes and said with a smile. You are too impatient. It is obvious that this is not the most correct way to Fishman Island. Karen smiled. What should we do now? Let me go first, Delica said calmly. Jinbei threw the trident aside, shook his wrist, and said with a ferocious smile, Since you are a human marine, you must be very strong. Delica gently swung her fishtail, regained her free posture, and smiled slightly. It doesn't matter. Okay, let's go. I will take you to find the correct entrance. Passing through the crack, Karen soon felt that she had entered a dreamy underwater world. I'm really not interested in you now. Karen narrowed his eyes and smiled at Delica. It doesn't matter. Jinbei's eyes lit up. He protected Delica behind him, and said calmly. This is Fishman Island? Karen asked in a daze. The scene in front of him was so dreamy that he could not take in it. But you will get tired of watching it for a long time. Okay, let's go first. The delicate water flow gently blows, bringing a refreshing feeling. When he came up, he first slapped Karen, and Jinbei said with hostility, Or, you are not a marine at all, but a shameless thief. Advertisement. The one who spoke just now was the leader, a blue-skinned fishman. He was fat and had 2 big teeth in his lower jaw. Really? Let me interrogate him and find out if he is a bad person. Oh. Karen put Delika down from his arms, but did not let go of his hand, but held her tightly because this was the air layer, not the seawater, and he was afraid that Delika would like that little boat. Delika's fish tail next to her also became cheerful. Stop looking down on people, just marine. I want you to understand the power of the fishmen. The fishmen are the real masters of this sea. The colorful coral reefs of Madura are intertwined in various shapes and colors under the sunlight. It looks particularly bright, with colorful schools of fish swimming in the water. The picture is like a colorful Madura picture. Jinbei held the trident in front of him and said angrily. Karen discovered that there were many small creatures hidden in the seaweed. They were playing in the water, sometimes diving into the seaweed, and sometimes jumping out, as if they were performing a wonderful dance for him. Karen shook his head. He didn't expect that the first thing he would do when he came to Fishman Island was to fight, and the target would be Jinbei. He's not very friendly to humans right now. Karen sincerely praised. It is a very beautiful place. Different from the appearance of Jinbei in the anime, the current Jinbei has not yet followed Fisher Tiger on his adventure in the sea. Why, are you not confident in your own strength, or do you think you look down on fishmen? Sorry, it was an emergency just now. There was a slight embarrassment on his face. Karen recognized him at a glance. Isn't this Jinbei, the sea knight who told the story of the 4 emperors? Only then did Karen realize that he was still grabbing Delika's wrist. He quickly let go, feeling a little speechless. What's going on with this sense of déjà vu as a villain? He is a guest of Fishman Island. Delika came back to Jinbei and said loudly. Interrogating guests is not the way to treat guests on Fishman Island. Jinbei's expression relaxed slightly, and he led the Fishman escort team to surround Karen. Human, let go of that mermaid. Human. Delika's words were interrupted. Karen looked up and found in front of him a group of Murloc guards holding tridents and wearing white coral hats. Karen said seriously. Delika stood in front of Karen, bowed to Jinbei, and explained. He is not a bad person, he is a human marine who protected me when I came back. After saying that, she started to swim towards a slightly flickering light source. Karen grabbed her hand and followed closely. After a while, Karen found a radiant crack with water flowing gently in it. It seemed that there was this as the entrance to Fishman Island. Then he looked at Jinbei and asked calmly, how do you want to be interrogated? Yes, this is Fishman Island, Delika replied with a smile, her eyes shining with excitement. Chapter 110. The Vengeful Karen advertisement. Jinbei was furious. Although he often heard Fisher Tiger say that there were many people in the human race who were much more powerful than him, he had never seen it. Now that he finally met a human being, it was Marine. He felt that it is necessary to fight him. After all, he is the strongest person on Fishman Island besides Tiger. Since Tiger has been groping outside these years, he has long been hungry and thirsty. Really? Karen chuckled, with a touch of sarcasm in his eyes. He even became angrier. Why are you laughing? You know, you remind me of a story? What? Do you know what a frog in a well is? What is that? You are now. Fart, lousy is a fish from the bottom of the sea. Jinbei obviously hadn't heard this story, and his serious rebuttal made Karen think it was quite cute. You laughed again. I don't, you obviously. Okay, don't you just want to fight? Karen didn't want the story to develop in a comedy direction. He said impatiently. Why do you talk so much? Just do it. I'm waiting for you. What are you waiting for me? When you draw your sword, you should be a swordsman. As expected of Kaisha Jinbei, although he is not as calm and responsible as in the anime, he still pays attention to rules. No, since you don't use weapons, I'm embarrassed to bully you. I don't use weapons because my hands are my weapons. After saying that, seeing that Karen was not using a weapon, Jinbei no longer hesitated and rushed towards Karen with a quick stride. His hands were like a pair of pliers and he grabbed Karen's shoulders hard. The fishman suddenly launched his shoulder throw. But Karen's shoulders were as if they were made of steel. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't shake them. How is this possible? Jinbei was shocked and filled with doubts. He has never seen such a tough human being, who can be as stable as a mountain under his powerful strength. You are really not simple. Jinbei's eyes flashed with excitement and he decided to increase his efforts. He adjusted his posture, preparing to use more strength. The heart of the water and the current are falling over my shoulders. Applying force again, the land under Jinbei's feet was instantly shaken by his powerful force. The ground made a dull roar, and then began to crack and collapse. Iron. Go. With Jinbei's roar, powerful power swept in like a wave and headed straight for Karen. Advertisement. Bang. With a loud noise, Jinbei's power hit Karen, the ground made a deafening sound and dust flew up. However, Karen still stood tall, her face unchanged. This. Jinbei couldn't believe it. He tried his best and couldn't even make Karen move. He suddenly remembered what Karen just said. I'm afraid Karen was not mocking him, but telling a fact. He showed more strength than Tiger Boss. Karen smiled. How is it? You are very strong. I admit that I am no match for you. You should be the strongest among humans. Jinbei seemed to be answering Karen, but also seemed to be comforting himself. It doesn't count. Karen lifted up his shirt, revealing the bandage inside, and said with a smile, just before I came down, I met a much stronger opponent than me. I almost died in that battle. What? Is there someone more powerful than you? A lot. After all, I'm just a major general. Afraid that Jinbei wouldn't understand, he explained. There are lieutenant generals, and fleet admirals above me. They are all stronger than me. How is that possible? Jinbei looked at his hands helplessly, looking very lost. At this moment, his heart was broken. Huh, little boy. I asked you to attack me indiscriminately, now you are stupid. Karen complained in his heart, but remained calm on the surface. With my ability, it's already pretty good if I can become a major general. He continued to hit. After all, I have only been practicing for 2.5 years. Jinbei seemed to be struck by lightning. He fell to his knees, at a loss. Are humans really so much more powerful than fishmen? He murmured, not daring to face all this. Ahem, forget it, I won't tease you anymore, I'm actually a genius. Seeing Jinbei being so frightened, Karen was too embarrassed to tease him anymore. There are humans who are stronger than me, let me think about it, Karen said thoughtfully. He clasped his fingers and said, well. There are Zephyr, Garp, Sakaski, and Polu in Marine. Selino, Kuzan, Warring States. Karen said a series of names. Jinbei was still listening, but gradually became numb after hearing it. Because Karen called too many names. There may also be Staffy. Although she didn't take action, she is a staff officer after all. No matter how you think about it, her strength should not be bad. As for pirates, there should be quite a few, enough. Jinbei slowly stood up from the ground and shouted angrily, I admit that you are very powerful, but I am still young. Oh, I'm 19 years old, what about you? Karen said with a smile. Jinbei was at a loss for words. He picked up the trident on the ground and said with an awkward smile. Ahem, Marine, I haven't asked your name yet? Advertisement, oh, my name is Karen, Karen said calmly. Welcome to Fishman Island as a guest, Master Karen. Jinbei performed the rituals of a fishman. Haha, you don't have to shout so politely. Karen patted Jinbei on the shoulder and said with a smile. Just call me sir. Jinbei froze. You're welcome, he said resentfully. Grown-ups. Well, good. I want to invite you to the palace. Well, don't get me wrong, it's because our princess likes humans like you the most. Jinbei bowed slightly. What kind of human am I? Humans who are kind to Fishman Island. Really, but I am the most vindictive person. Karen reminded. You just hit me. There were faint beads of sweat sliding down Jinbei's face. Don't be nervous, let me hit you gently and the matter is over, how about that? Jinbei had no choice, just like Karen couldn't refuse Jinbei's temptation. So he could only imitate Karen and stand there obediently. Karen comforted. Don't be nervous, as you just said, I am actually very friendly to the fish people. Yes, Karen is very friendly. Delica also spoke for Karen. The tension in Jinbei's heart dissipated a little. He could doubt Karen's words, but he still trusted Delica. After all, they both lived on Fishman Island. Are you ready? Delica cast an encouraging look. Jinbei took a deep breath and said in a deep voice. All right. Very good. Karen drew out the hidden feng. The weapon color instantly wrapped around the sword, and the gourmet skill quietly activated. At the same time, he shouted loudly. God avoids. Chapter 111 The world belongs to the fish people advertisement. Karen's powerful sword did not fall in the end. He only wanted to escort Delica back this time, not to come here to cause trouble. He just wanted to let Jinbei and the people on Fishman Island understand that he was not a good person. Just mess with it. The tip of the sword just stopped at the tip of Jinbei's nose. Jinbei lived up to the title of sea hero in his previous life. Although the sweat fell like rain on his face, he never closed his eyes from the beginning to the end. What do you mean? Jinbei's teeth were chattering. She can't be killed. Pung. Karen turned his wrist and used the horizontal side of the Tibetan feng to slap Jinbei hard on the chest. Jinbei was instantly whipped away with terrifying force, spun several 360 degrees in the air, and finally plunged into the dirt. Jinbei guard chief. The Murloc guards who came with Jinbei began to exclaim. They quickly swam to Jinbei's location, and a group of people worked together to pull Jinbei out of the soil. Ahem. Jinbei coughed a few times and spit out the sand in his mouth. Human, how dare you be so presumptuous? One of the fishman guards saw that Jinbei was fine, so he raised the trident in his hand and was about to stab Karen. Because Karen's momentum just now was only aimed at Jinbei, he did not intuitively feel Karen's terror. He just felt that with so many people on his side, he could not easily deal with a human brat. Karen seemed to be stunned and didn't even move. Stop. Jinbei was so frightened that his heart stopped beating for a second. Only by experiencing it personally can you know how scary Karen is. He dodged and grabbed the fishman by the back of his neck. Jinbei said loudly. I'm fine. After stopping the Murloc guards who were about to take action, Jinbei came to Karen again and said slowly. Have you vented your anger now, sir? Karen put away Zhangfeng and nodded. I'm venting my anger, but I don't agree with what you just said. You have to understand that only living can have hope. In my opinion, choosing death is a cowardly move. If I had not chosen to endure the pirate's death threat, then the story would have ended. He also relied on the power of hatred to undergo a transformation in strength. He had to admit that he slacked off a lot after taking revenge. Especially in the 2 years in Donghai, although his strength has not improved slowly, he no longer feels like he wants to give it all. He had a very smooth life, just like Jinbei in front of him. He had never left Fishman Island, so he didn't know the horrors of the outside world. Karen has never entered the new world, so he doesn't understand what the new world is like. Advertisement. After all, the side shown in the comics is just the tip of the iceberg. There are many more places waiting for Karen to explore. Is it a coward to choose death? Jinbei looked at Karen deeply, and finally nodded. I remember, sir. Karen stretched and chuckled. Haha, you don't need to call me sir, just call me Karen. Jinbei. It's Jinbei who's back. I heard that he just drove away a group of pirates who came to cause trouble a few days ago. It's so reassuring to have Jinbei here. Jinbei led Karen and Delica from the front, and the group walked from the Gerlong Court Square towards the palace. The passers-by around are very familiar with Jinbei, of course because they are so conspicuous. Why do I know these words so well? Karen muttered softly. Delica answered his questions at the right time. She said softly. In Windmill Village at that time, as long as you went back, they would say these things. Oh, is that so? I really miss it. I miss it too. After all, we have lived together for 2 years. It's been a great 2 years. Karen started chatting with Delica, which made Jinbei and his party very itchy because they also yearn for life in the outside world. It's just that no one has really left Fishman Island. Let alone going to the outside world now, whether they can successfully reach the Dragon Palace is still a problem. Ha ha ha, hello everyone, let me meet you, my name is Karen. Jinbei couldn't bear it any longer. He directly scolded the booing crowd and said loudly. Delica looked at Jinbei deeply, as if she wanted to transfer what she saw and heard into his mind. Jinbei bowed to Karen and apologized. Mr. Karen, they have no ill intentions towards you and Marine. The main reason is that they didn't know about this in the past few years, and more pirates have come to Fishman Island. Jinbei couldn't help but interrupt, his tone full of hope and longing. Shut up. All the rumors are known from the mouths of other mermaids and pirates. Advertisement Jinbei. Karen waved his hand and said with a smile, it doesn't matter, I like this atmosphere. The one who comforted Delica turned out to be Jinbei, who had never left Fishman Island. He thought of Yamato, Princess Odahime, and they were struggling for the future of Fishman Island. Execute humans, and the world belongs to the fishmen. Mr. Cullen is the most distinguished guest of our Fishman Island. If anyone dares to speak nonsense, don't blame me for being rude. At the same time, he also secretly vowed in his heart that he must leave Fishman Island in the future to see the magnificent scene outside. At this moment, a few sharp-eyed people in the crowd suddenly spotted Karen, and he shouted excitedly. Her tone became sad, probably thinking of the days when she sang in the shark bar. You can't feel many things just by hearing about them, you can only witness them with your own eyes. Of course, many times, life is not so good. After all, this era is called the Age of Big Pirates, not the Age of Big Marines, let alone the Age of Big Murlocs. I don't know who started it, but a voice shouted. The pill is spicy, my life is at risk. I believe they can do it. Is that place really as beautiful as you say? As you can see, I am a human, but I am not a pirate, but a marine. Then, Karen walked out of the crowd and clapped happily. It's true. Look, there's a human inside. Facts have proved that Jinbei is quite prestigious in Fishman Island. After he finished speaking, the booing crowd gradually subsided. You know, pirates are usually inhumane. They often capture my compatriots, so we feel deeply disgusted with them. Jinbei. Execute this human being. Immediately afterwards, more and more fishmen shouted. The outside world is still prejudiced against us, and the problem of racial discrimination has not changed. It must be another shameless pirate caught by the Jinbei guard captain. Karen looked at the crowd making noises with interest. He noticed that the first person to yell this was a white fishman with long black curly hair. Chapter 112 Hello everyone advertisement Karen continued. The Marines are similar to your escorts, they protect the people. Well, anyway, I came here today to make friends with you and I don't mean any harm. The fishmen and mermaids who were watching looked at each other in confusion, and no one paid any attention to Karen. This atmosphere reminded Karen of the moment when he confessed to Tina in the cafeteria, the same public attention, the same embarrassment. Karen doesn't want to experience a scene like that again, now he wants to prove that he is definitely not a clown. So, he looked at Jinbei. Jinbei. Then, under the coercion of Karen's eyes, a big smile appeared on his lips, and he was the first to applaud. Next came the escort led by him, but the applause was muted and not contagious at all. This makes the originally awkward scene even more awkward and even a little weird. What's going on with these fish people? They can't speak. Karen cursed in her heart. It's better to ask for help than to ask for help from others. Fortunately, I have the ability to make people talk now. Immediately, Karen coughed lightly, recalling an advertisement he heard in his previous life, and said loudly, "Hello everyone, I am Zazawi." Then, before all the fishmen and fishmen present had time to think about what this sentence meant, they began to echo loudly and uncontrollably. "Come and bite me if you're a brother." Everyone's voices were very loud and neat, which made the originally silent Geelong code square instantly boil. "Huh, sure enough, this is much more comfortable." Karen was smiling. "What happened? Why is my mouth suddenly out of control? The way humans greet each other is really terrible. Why do brothers kill each other?" He is a devil fruit user. There were still some very knowledgeable people in the crowd, and they soon understood that Karen had used his power on them. "Ha ha ha, I'm sorry, I really don't mean any harm. I'm very easygoing, right?" Advertisement Karen made a ha-ha, and asked Jinbei the last question. Jinbei nodded with a smile on his face. "I thought to myself, who just said that he was very vindictive and almost killed me, but now you say that he is easygoing and easygoing." Of course, he could only keep these words in his heart and said loudly, "Yes, don't panic. Mr. Karen is the most distinguished guest of our Fishman Island and a friend personally invited by the princess." It turns out he is a friend of the princess. The fish people immediately became friendly, with a hint of curiosity in their eyes. They had never heard of the princess having a human friend. "What's the outside world like?" A young-looking fishman mustered up the courage to say, his voice so soft that it was almost inaudible. Karen slowly walked up to him and said with a smile, "Outside, it's actually pretty much the same as here." "Almost. Well, the only difference is that it is much bigger and more complicated than here." The young fishman frowned, obviously confused by Karen's words. "Complex? What kind of complexity is it?" "There are all kinds of different cultures, races and lifestyles in the outside world." Karen explained, "In some places people live in harmony, but in more places they can't even have enough to eat. Are there other races out there? In fact, this is also the reason why Fishman Island has a bad relationship with humans, because most of the humans they come into contact with are pirates, which will inevitably make them think humans are cruel and tyrannical." "Your Highness, this is not the place to talk. There's a dirty side and there's a beautiful side." "Why are your Royal Highnesses here? I was just going to see you with Mr. Karen." "So what's your mission here?" she asked curiously. "Yes, there are giant tribes, longhand tribes, snake-headed tribes, fur tribes." "Hello, Odahime." Karen greeted casually, "What do you think of the human world?" "Sorry, Karen, I overlooked it, let's talk as we go." "Hello, young human marine." Princess Odahime's voice was soft and warm, with a hint of excitement. "Welcome to Fishman Island as a guest. Marine rarely comes to Fishman Island." Advertisement Jinbei reminded. The person who asked this question was not this young fishman, but a female mermaid wearing a long robe with a fish scale pattern. "Really, that's great," Odahime murmured, and then said seriously, "Welcome home." "No, it's just personal reasons." Karen shook his head, then pointed at Delika. "I'm sending a friend back." He had some impression of Odahime and knew that she was a very kind mermaid, even a little too kind. With the arrival of Odahime, more and more fish and mermaids come to Jirankad Square, and the place will soon be surrounded by water. "I didn't expect our tribe to be quite enthusiastic." Odahime smiled slightly, turned around and led Karen towards the palace. She leaned forward slightly, her expression focused, and she was full of desire and expectation for Karen's every word. "I see." Odahime suddenly realized that she had actually already known from Tiger's mouth why there had been an increase in pirates in recent years. "Your Highness the Princess, can they all live in peace with humans?" Jinbei also bowed slightly, and then introduced to Karen. "This is my Princess of Fishman Island, Her Highness Odahime." "Your Highness the Princess." Odahime's steps paused slightly, she looked around and exhaled a long breath. "Why are you here suddenly?" Jinbei had already followed Odahime's footsteps. "Because Marine goes to the top of New World." Karen explained. "Those pirates can't walk on top, so they usually pass through the underground caves near Fishman Island." She has long wavy golden hair and orange hair accessories. Her eyes are blinking like the sun shining on the sea, full of vitality and curiosity. Jinbei glanced at Karen, hesitated for a moment, and whispered, "It's Mr. Karen who is greeting them. I just suddenly heard a very neat and exciting sound coming from here, so I was curious and came over to take a look." Odahime looked confused. "Do you know what happened just now?" "Yes, Your Highness Odahime." Delika bowed. "Friend?" Odahime's eyes lit up. She looked at Delika and asked softly, "Are you a mermaid who returned from land?" "In fact, I quite like it here. These are all fresh leeks." Karen secretly cursed in his heart. His originally dead reputation value suddenly erupted in a small wave in this square. The moment they saw her, all the fishmen and fishmen present saluted her. "I thought you guys had a conflict." Chapter 113 Becoming Friends with Odahime. Advertisement: The Dragon Palace of Fishman Island is located on the top floor of Fishman Island where the sun can be seen. It is made of large coral reefs, shells and other building materials. Karen's first feeling when he saw it was dreamy, and then he was shocked. "How does it feel compared to a human palace?" Odahime turned around and asked softly. "I have never been to a human imperial city, but it should feel inferior to the Dragon Palace." Karen answered honestly, "Thank you for the compliment." Soon, the group of people arrived inside the dragon palace. In the middle of the palace stood a mermaid wearing a crown and who was stronger than the average mermaid. He has thick, fluffy orange-red hair and beard, flame-like tattoos on his arms, and thick body hair. He is the king of Fishman Island, the great knight of the sea, King Neptune. Standing on either side of him are his sons, the three Poseidon brothers. Their faces are still very young, but their height is almost the same as Karen's. "Hello, noble marine." King Neptune gave Karen a lot of face, so naturally Karen wouldn't show off. He gave a slight salute and said, "Hello, your majesty." "Ha ha ha, this is the first time our Fishman Island has received marines from outside since we became a franchised country. Please forgive me if I did anything wrong, we don't mean any harm." Your majesty was joking. "I like it here very much. The fish and mermaids here are also very friendly." Karen glanced at Jinbei calmly, and complained in her heart, "I had a fight with your escorts when I first arrived on the island, and they are indeed quite friendly now." Jinbei noticed Karen's gaze and lowered his head instantly. After all, it was him who was in the wrong, and he hadn't been beaten yet. "Master Karen, are you here just to send your friends back?" Purdon's tone was inquiring and curious, with a hint of vigilance. "Of course not." Advertisement Purdon held his breath and listened carefully to Karen's next words. Karen replied matter-of-factly, "This is just one of my purposes. More importantly, I want to hang out on Fishman Island." "Are there no other tasks?" Odahime continued, "for example, a mission to promote the relationship between humans and Fishman Island." "Sorry, Your Highness." Karen bowed slightly. It wasn't that he didn't want to take care of it, but he had nothing to do about the conflicts between races. Odahime sighed with some disappointment, and then she asked again, "I heard you say in the square just now that there are not only humans living on the land, but also various other races?" "Yes. Are they like Fishman Island?" "I don't know if it's all of them, but I know some of them, yes." Karen thought of the Dantata clan and the Giant clan. Their relationship with humans was not very good. The main reason for this is actually that the top human beings are celestial dragons. Although the world government explicitly prohibits slavery in law, there are still many slave trades secretly. Some celestial dragons, whose class is higher than the law, regard slave keeping as one of their hobbies. All races, regardless of gender, old or young, are clearly marked with prices. Life was trampled down by the celestial dragons and was worthless. Especially the Dantata clan, they have been enslaved by humans for a long time. Of course, under the rule of King Riku of the Kingdom of Dressrosa, the slaves of the small humans have been liberated, and the legend of fairies has been used to prevent humans from disturbing the small humans. But because of the loss of the work of the small humans, the country became poorer than before. Hundreds of years of misunderstanding and conflict have led many races to hold various forms of prejudice against other races. Karen also sighed. Although many humans have good intentions towards other races, under the influence of those in power, most of them are very prejudiced against foreign races. Actually, this is not just a problem for humans. Just like on Fishman Island, there are also a large number of fish people who think that fish people are a noble race and look down on humans from the bottom of their hearts. Jinbei. Oh, I know what you said, but it can't be changed in one generation. Advertisement Odahime felt Karen's helplessness, and she could also feel Karen's kindness. Her domineering aura of knowledge and knowledge is innate, and she can easily feel the other person's thoughts and emotions. This ability is even rarer than conquerors. Although I may not be able to see that day in my lifetime, I am willing to be a pioneer of Fishman Island and human friendship. Her voice was serious and powerful, and Karen unconsciously believed her words and deeply understood her thoughts. Karen had a strong feeling that she wanted to help the determined woman in front of her. But the next moment, he reacted and quickly used his knowledge to resist this feeling. Although he didn't know if it was useful, after awakening, the color of knowledge is actually always on. When you really use it consciously, it will become more powerful. This is actually her ability to see and hear things, which can subtly influence the minds and thoughts of others and create a strong resonance, and can even change the other person's values and ideology. Karen thought of the plot in which Odahime went to Marihoa, where she successfully persuaded the celestial dragons and brought back the world noble's signature agreeing to establish friendly relations between the Murlocs and humans. It seems that she was able to convince the celestial dragons in the anime because of this power. But judging from her appearance, she didn't feel it herself. It should have been used unconsciously like Shirahoshi, Karen secretly speculated in her heart. "Mr. Cullen, will you help me?" Odahime looked at Karen with burning eyes, a kind of determination and expectation in her eyes. "I'm sorry, I'm just a Marine Major General." Karen politely rejected her. He didn't want to bear this responsibility for no reason. He should leave these things to the future. "Although I personally have a good impression of Fishman Island, I can't help you. I'm Marine, and my duty is to catch pirates, so I can't stay too long." Odahime's expression froze slightly, and she bit her lip, trying to hide her frustration in her eyes. "It's okay, thank you," she said firmly and sincerely, with a hint of pleading in her voice. "So, can we be friends?" Looking at her eyes, Karen couldn't refuse. After all, they were just friends, so this was not a very embarrassing thing. He grinned. Certainly. Chapter 114 Reproduction. Advertisement. The moment he said it, he felt strange because he didn't know whether this was his original intention or whether it had been influenced by Odahime. It is indeed the most top-notch sight and experience, so terrifying. Thank you, Mr. Cullen. Friends don't need to thank you, and they don't need to call you sir. Karen blurted out, and then he shook his head helplessly. Oh, forget it. I can't tell, I really can't tell. Okay, Karen, you don't have to call me your highness, just call me Odahime. As she spoke, she stretched out her hand to shake Karen's hand. Karen hesitated, but finally took it. Thank you, Karen, you are my first human friend. I believe I will have many human friends in the future, and maybe other races. Odahime smiled slightly, her eyes shining with hope. Ha ha ha, Mr. Cullen, get ready to eat. King Neptune applauded, and a group of female mermaids brought out sumptuous delicacies and placed them on the table. Soon, the table was filled with fresh seafood, Madara-colored seaweed, and desserts made from various sea fruits, exuding tempting aromas. Karen found that there was no fish food here. He learned from Delika's mouth that mermaids do not eat fish, but fishmen do. This is our specialty dish from the bottom of the sea. I hope you like it. Odahime looked at Karen expectantly, her eyes showing curiosity about his reaction. Karen sat down on Neptune's right-hand side, secretly glad that she was not allergic to seafood. He smiled slightly and began to taste these delicacies. The taste is actually not bad, but most of these are marine plants and shellfish, and the taste is a little different from the food he eats on land. It's not that it tastes bad, it's just that he's not used to it. Although there was no meat that he was used to, the fresh seafood and unique seasoning gave him a novel experience. This is our special dish from the bottom of the sea. I hope you like it. Odahime looked at Karen expectantly, her eyes showing curiosity about his reaction. Karen put an apple-shaped fruit into his mouth, and his eyes lit up. The fruit bloomed with rich sweetness in his mouth, and the fresh juice instantly filled his taste buds. Yes, it's a delicious dish that's different from the mainland. As long as you like it. Odahime exhaled softly. Karen asked curiously. By the way, why haven't you seen Shirahoshi? Shirahoshi's appearance is recognized by the world as beautiful. She is the only one who can compete with the world's most beautiful woman, Boya Hancock, and she is the ancient weapon Poseidon. Advertisement. It was a bit regretful not to see Shirahoshi when I came to Fishman Island. Shirahoshi? Odahime looked at Karen in confusion. Karen blurted out. Isn't she your daughter? Then, with an embarrassed look on his face, he said haha. Haha, maybe I remembered it wrong. Daughter? Odahime said thoughtfully, I do have an unborn daughter. And I never had a name, Shirahoshi, Shirahoshi. She recited the word Shirahoshi several times, and then she smiled and said, I think this name is good and suitable for my daughter. From now on, she will be called Shirahoshi. Come on, I didn't expect that Shirahoshi wasn't born yet, and by some strange combination of circumstances, her name turned out to be that of me. Karen coughed lightly and smiled awkwardly. Are you pregnant? You can't tell at all? And how do you know it's your daughter? There should be no B ultrasound in this world. Karen has always been very curious about the reproduction method between mermaids, but he really can't ask this kind of question. And by observing the tail of the mermaid, he discovered that Odahime was a goldfish, Neptune was a coelacanth, and the children they gave birth to were actually sharks, oarfish, and red sunfish. The unborn Shirahoshi is a giant mermaid. This made Karen look at Neptune with something vaguely wrong. Neptune also noticed that Karen was secretly looking at him. Of course, he didn't understand what Karen was thinking. He was slightly stunned, and then gave Karen a kind smile. Karen nodded to Neptune with the same smile. Pregnant? Odahime was a little confused, but then she understood what Karen meant and explained. We mermaids and humans reproduce in different ways. I heard Tiger say that humans only have viviparous birth, but we mermaids have two methods of reproduction. One of them is after 30 years old, with the opposite S**X. Odahime's cheeks were a little rosy. In short, they're just like humans. This method can breed between mermaids and fishmen. The other one is just like fish. The female needs to find a suitable place to lay eggs, and then the male takes over the life. The first one is too troublesome. I haven't tried it yet. Karen immediately grasped the key point, that is to say, after the mermaid reaches the age of 30, it can grow legs and combine with humans or other races. Do you know where we can spread our voice and how to quickly gain reputation? Oh, that's it. Karen nodded, and he learned a lot from this trip. In fact, compared to the first method, most of us mermaids will choose the second method, because it is more convenient, does not have to bear the pain of pregnancy, and can save time. The blush on Odahime's face has faded. She nodded and continued. Indeed, understanding is the basis of communication. Maybe letting humans know more about our lives and culture can reduce racial discrimination. Advertisement. Karen's small reaction was unmistakable in her eyes. Karen, thank you very much. Thank you for pointing out to me the fog that plagues Fishman Island. You seem to be very interested in Shirahoshi? Odahime asked curiously. Odahime's eyes sparkled, as if she was really prompted by Karen. She suddenly stood up and bowed to Karen. Karen said firmly, trying to sound as natural as possible. Only by understanding the living customs of different races can we better understand and communicate with each other. I am not interested in Shirahoshi, but I am interested in the lifestyle of mermaids and mermaids. Reproduction is also a part of understanding mermaids and mermaids. Is that so? Odahime nodded heavily, thinking about Karen's words. Yes, my daughter, well, that is Shirahoshi. She did use the second method, but she is not born yet. Based on past experience, she will probably be born next year. Karen wouldn't say it either, he quickly denied it and said. That's the ancient weapon Poseidon. It would be wrong not to be interested. What she sees and hears is very terrifying. She is like a psychology expert, and no emotional changes can escape her eyes. I've learned a lesson. Karen cupped her hands and said sincerely. There are so many wonders in the world. Thank you for clarifying my doubts. Her eyes became brighter and brighter, and her tone became more and more excited. Finally, he looked at Odahime and asked, is Shirahoshi the second type? Odahime was still excited and seemed not to notice his embarrassment. Of course, Odahime obviously doesn't know how special Shirahoshi is yet. What do you understand? Hey, I just said casually. The smile on Karen's face was a little stiff. He grabbed a red fruit and took a bite to hide his inner embarrassment. I have always believed that only through in-depth understanding can misunderstandings and barriers between different cultures and lifestyles be broken. Odahime raised her head excitedly and looked at Karen expectantly. Now I understand that I need a platform, a place where our voices can be spread. As long as I find a suitable place to speak out, I can spread the ideas and culture of our Fishman Island in the human world. I just expressed some personal opinions. Karen was a little flustered and waved her hands quickly, trying to ease the atmosphere. No, this is very important to me. I have been thinking about how to let humans understand us better, but I always feel that there is a missing opportunity. Then it stayed on Neptune's face for a moment with a strange expression. Please urge me to update, please ask for everything. I understand, that's how it is. Chapter 115 Bracelet. Advertisement. I also want to know. Karen's face was complicated. He had been trying to contact News King Morgan since he returned to Marine headquarters, but he had not been able to contact him. It's not that he didn't get in touch, it's just that when the other party heard that it was Karen who was looking for him, he immediately hung up the phone. Presumably he was afraid that Karen would retaliate against him. After all, he had reported false information about Karen. In this regard, Karen also expressed helplessness. There is a creature called Newsbird in the human world. They are all over the world and can spread news quickly. Their boss is called Mogos, who is the underground emperor of the human world. You can find a way to get his contact information. You can ask him to help promote Fishman Island. Ahem, if you find him, you can contact me. I also have something to talk to him about. Karen shared everything he knew with Odahime, which was not a bad thing, as he could just use the power of Fishman Island. Morgans, okay, thank you. This is the first time Odahime has said thank you tonight. Anyway, Karen feels that she has been saying thank you since chatting with her. You're welcome, aren't we friends? Karen poured a glass of wine and made a toast gesture to Odahime and Neptune. Odahime and Neptune raised their glasses together, and the three drank it down in one gulp. Karen's eyes lit up. The drinks on Fishman Island were much lighter than those in other places. The drinks flowed gently through the throat and it tasted very comfortable. He put down his glass and said with a smile, good wine. Ha ha ha, if you like it, I'll have someone bring some back to you. Neptune laughed, his face filled with pride. Thank you very much. Karen thanked him. Neptune said solemnly, it's a trivial matter. You are the most distinguished guest of our Fishman Island. There is no need to thank you. Karen, do you want to see Shirahoshi? At this time, Odahime suddenly asked. Karen nodded. I am indeed very curious about her, but I have no ill intentions. You have helped us a lot, and I can tell that you have no ill intentions. Odahime looked at Neptune, stood up, and said seriously, Your Majesty, I want Karen to see our daughter. This. Neptune hesitated, but finally nodded in agreement. Okay, I imagine Karen's character, and I also trust your judgment. Karen and Odahime came to the depths of the seabed together. There was seawater everywhere, so Karen's body was wrapped in a bubble film so that he could move freely on the seabed. The only one who followed Karen and Odahime was the great Prince Sharkstar. Neither Jinbei nor Neptune came. This is it. Odahime pointed to a heavy-looking iron door in the distance. Advertisement. Karen recognized where this place was. It was the place where Shirahoshi later threatened and pursued Shirahoshi to avoid the ninth chief Vanderdecken. The safest place on Fishman Island is the hard shell tower. After passing through the coating, the bubble film on Karen's body naturally fell off. Your Highness the Princess, the nearby guards saluted. Well, thank you for your hard work, everyone. Odahime smiled softly, and then pointed to Karen. I will bring my friends to see Shirahoshi today. Only then did the guards realize that Karen was not a mermaid, and they shouted in surprise, Human? There was wariness and disgust in his tone. Don't be nervous, everyone. Karen is not a pirate. He, Marine, is the most distinguished guest of our Fishman Island. Odahime calmed the guards, with a firm and serious smile on her face. Okay, Master Karen. The guards nodded and recognized Karen's identity. Okay, open the door. Odahime ordered softly. The guards acted quickly and opened the door to the hard-shell tower. As the door slowly opened, Karen could see clearly the interior scene of the hard-shell tower. The hard-shell tower is large and empty inside, with basically no decoration. There is only a huge enclosed shell in the center of the tower. Odahime pointed to the shell and said with a smile, "My daughter is inside." Karen looked around curiously and did not ask Odahime to open the shell. After all, it would be too presumptuous. "Thank you for bringing me here, it's amazing," Karen admired sincerely. "Karen, do you have children?" Odahime suddenly asked. Karen thought of Uda and nodded. "Yes, although she is not my biological child, I love her very much." Odahime's eyes lit up and she continued to ask, "Is it a boy or a girl?" "Girl. That's it. Can you bring her with you next time? I hope they can become very good friends." "Okay, she should also like it here very much. How long do you plan to stay here?" "Advertisement, 2 or 3 days, I have other tasks in the near future." "Then you must visit our Fishman Island more these days." "Haha, of course." After leaving the hard shell tower, Karen refused to rest in the Dragon Palace, but went to the southeast direction of Fishman Island, Coral Hill. This is the commercial street of Fishman Island. The atmosphere in the commercial street is lively, and the colorful Madara signboards are particularly dazzling against the seawater. There are a wide variety of products, from fresh seafood to exquisite handicrafts. Fish people and mermaids mixed together and communicated with each other, and the atmosphere was friendly and warm. "It's really lively here," Karen sighed. "It's no different from human society." "Yes, Coral Hill is the most prosperous place on our Fishman Island," Delica said with a smile. "There are many shops and stalls here, and the products sold are all specialties of our Fishman Island." Then the two people stopped at a shop selling handicrafts. The exterior of the shop was decorated with colorful Madara corals and shells, and a string of sparkling starfish hung at the door. The shelves in the store are filled with a variety of handicrafts, from exquisite necklaces and bracelets to unique ornaments, each of which exudes a unique artistic atmosphere. Delica stopped in front of a bracelet woven with seaweed. There was also a small blue sea bead hanging on this bracelet, which shone with an alluring luster. "This bracelet is so beautiful, how much does it cost?" The shop owner is a friendly fishman. Hearing Delica's inquiry, he immediately came over with a smile. "This bracelet is specially customized and priced at 100,000 belly. 100,000 baileys is not too expensive." Karen was about to pay, but was stopped by Delica. Karen asked Delica with her eyes. She smiled slightly. "I want to buy one for Uda." Karen understood and nodded. "Okay, I will transfer it to her for you." "Thanks." Delica had also accumulated some money over the years following Karen. She was originally unwilling to take it, but Karen told her that it was her reward for teaching Uda music, so she reluctantly accepted it. Just when Delica handed the money to the shopkeeper, a sinister voice came from the side. "Hey, I want this bracelet." Chapter 116 Provocation. Advertisement. Karen and Delica turned to look together and found that the speaker was a white-skinned fishman, and his physical characteristics were like a great white shark. Karen's eyes narrowed slightly, and he recognized that the fishman in front of him was the fishman who was setting the rhythm in the square earlier. He is the younger version of Hody Jones. Like most fishmen, he was born in Fishman Street. He was a fishman who was taught that humans are inferior evil creatures since he was a child. He hates humans and believes that fishmen are the supreme race, so he hates humans. Hody Jones lowered his head and slowly walked towards the stall. When the fishman shop owner saw that the person coming was Hody Jones, his expression became obviously stiff. He plucked up the courage and whispered, "Hody Jones, this bracelet has been bought by this mermaid lady. You can look at the others." Hody Jones picked his ears and glanced fiercely at Karen next to Delica, as if he had heard a big joke. "Giahahaha, mermaid, he is not a mermaid, he is just a despicable human being. It's the mermaid next to him," the shopkeeper explained in a low voice. "Haha, since she chooses to help humans, it means that she is no longer a mermaid." Hody Jones spat on the ground and said disdainfully, "He has looked down on humans since he was a child, and even more so on the fish and mermaids who help humans." Delica was standing next to Karen. She ignored Hody Jones's increasingly gloomy expression and helped Karen retort. "Karen is not a despicable human being, he is a distinguished guest of Fishman Island." Hody Jones snatched the bracelet that Delica had chosen, and then stared at Karen fiercely. "He is just a guest of that woman Odahime, not a guest of Fishman Island." Presumptuous. The shopkeeper had a sense of justice. When he heard that Hody Jones was disrespectful to Odahime, he said angrily on the spot, "Princess Odahime's guests are our guests of Fishman Island. Jones, I advise you not to use what you learned in Fishman Street. Use that said here." "So what if you use it?" Hody Jones dismissed it. Advertisement. The shop owner glanced at the patrolling guards and shouted loudly, "Don't forget what Boss Tiger said, and Jinbei is the captain of the guard in the palace." It seems that Odahime has such a high prestige on Fishman Island that even a stall owner dares to speak for Odahime at the risk of offending the local gang. Karen couldn't help feeling a little emotional. It was indeed the top level of knowledge. "Sir, please forgive our rudeness on Fishman Island. Since you are a friend of Princess Odahime, we cannot allow you to be coerced and endangered here." The shopkeeper took the bracelet out of Hody Jones's hand again and gave it to Delica with a smile. Since we are friends of Fishman Island, there is no charge for this bracelet. As for you, get out of here or I will call those guards over. The shop owner must have grown up in Fishman Street, and he speaks with a certain charlatanism. Hody Jones stared at the shopkeeper, his hands clenched into fists, and veins burst out from the exertion on his exposed arms. You're fine. Hody Jones didn't understand why these compatriots who grew up on Fishman Island were so respectful to him even though Cullen was just a human. Because he also didn't understand why Odahime and Tiger tried their best to make friends with humans. He had been suppressing his emotions, but he finally chose to endure it because the movement just now attracted the attention of the guards. He knew that those guards were Odahime's people and they would not help him. Delica waved her hands quickly. Thank you for your kindness, but no, I gave this bracelet to a friend. It's not a good idea not to charge for it. Is that so? Then you can choose one more item from me. There will be no charge for the item you choose. It will be considered as buy one and get one free. The shop owner was very kind and insisted on letting Delica choose one more item. Karen is a little disappointed. What development is this? Why was the villain scolded away before I even took action? However, I am your princess's guest, why don't you let me choose? A smile appeared at the corner of Karen's mouth. This boss is really cute. Since he is such a friendly boss, Karen doesn't want anything to happen to him. He remembered that Hody Jones was a very cruel person. In the plot, he was extreme and cold-blooded. He would do anything to achieve his goals. He would not hesitate to get rid of his fellow humans, Murlocs, who were close to humans, and even he will also use his subordinates as a shield when attacked. Advertisement: now the boss has offended Hody Jones in order to protect Karen, which will definitely trigger Hody Jones' revenge in the future. What's more, Delica will live here in the future, and Karen will not let this time bomb go unnoticed. Stop. Karen shook his neck and said calmly. Do you feel very dissatisfied? You think fish people are the noblest race, and you look down on humans from the bottom of your heart. Hody Jones stopped and smiled ferociously at Karen. Isn't that right? Humans are just the most despicable and weak race. Whether it is physical fitness or body structure, they are far inferior to us fishmen. Why can humans enjoy life on land, but we fishmen have to live in the dark seabed? This is so unfair. In the future, I will definitely gather all my clan members to drive humans to the bottom of the sea. In terms of physical fitness alone, humans are indeed inferior to fishmen, but humans definitely rely on more than just fists to rule the world. Oh, it's my humble opinion. Since you think fishmen are stronger than humans, then have a fight with me. That way, it will be clear who is the real strong one. Karen didn't want to waste time refuting an absolutely racist fishman, so he simply provoked Hody directly. The shop owner who was helping Delica choose handicrafts did not expect Karen to be so impulsive. He hurriedly reminded. No, sir, don't be impulsive. Jones is one of the strongest men in our Fishman Street. Karen seemed not to have heard, and continued to challenge Hody Jones. If you really think you are better than me, then give it a try, but you will die if you lose. The smile on Hody Jones's face became distorted due to exaggeration, and he smiled sinisterly. Giahahaha, very good, just what I want, but this is not a place for fighting. If you have the courage, come with me to Fishman Street. I didn't expect that this guy was quite smart and even found a terrain that was beneficial to him. However, with the gap in strength, any cleverness was useless. Karen was naturally fearless and followed Hody Jones towards the dark direction in the distance with a smile. What do you think of this? Delica asked with interest, holding a necklace made of white pearls. Beautiful Miss Mermaid, your friends have all been called to Fishman Street, why don't you stop them? The store manager stood at the stall at a loss. Karen was Princess Odahime's customer. No need, he is very strong. Delica didn't even raise her head. Seeing Delica's reaction, the shopkeeper stamped his feet anxiously. He gritted his teeth and shouted to the guards in the distance. Go and invite Jinbei. Chapter 117 Fishman Street. Advertisement: Fishman Street is a large place that shelters orphans. However, due to poor management, Fishman Street has become a gathering place for illegal groups. Tiger, Jinbei, and Aaron were all born in Fishman Street. Following Hody Jones through a dark alley, the surrounding environment suddenly became depressing and gloomy. The buildings on both sides of the street looked crooked and old, the walls were covered with traces of time, and there was a damp smell in the air, mixed with the smell of seawater and garbage. A low noise could be heard faintly from the end of the street. As it went deeper and deeper, the low noise became clearer and clearer, accompanied by occasional cheers and quarrels. Aaron! 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 At the end of the alley, there was a circle of Murlocs surrounding them. They were shouting hoarsely at the center, and their eyes were all red with excitement. Hody Jones slowly stopped and turned to face Karen with a grin. Very well, I have to admire your courage, but since you are here, don't even think about going back today. Karen shook his head and sighed helplessly. It was not because he was afraid, but the noisy shouts and the pungent smell of cigarettes around him made him feel a little uncomfortable. Giahahaha, it's too late to regret now, despicable human being. Seeing Karen shaking his head, Hody Jones smiled even more wantonly. His laughter also attracted the crowd of onlookers. Many fishmen turned their eyes to Karen, with shock and hostility on their faces. Humans? Ha 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 ha, I didn't expect humans to come to Fishman Street. Is he here looking for death? Doesn't he know what Fishman Street is? Is this tonight's special? The fishmen who were watching all showed mocking smiles and chatted in low voices, their voices full of contempt. Aaron also discovered Karen. He pushed through the crowd and looked at Hody Jones. Jones, why did you bring a human in? Brother Aaron, this human thinks that fishmen are inferior creatures, so I coaxed him here specially. Hody Jones took a rake and poured dirty water on Karen. What? Damn humans, how dare you say that to us? I heard that human meat is fresh and tender, you can try it tonight. Kill him. Kill him. Kill him. The onlookers suddenly fell into a state of agitation, and their fanatical emotions made their eyes become more fierce. Waves of ridicule and hatred came in like a tide, instantly pushing the atmosphere to the extreme. Advertisement Hody Jones was very satisfied with the fishman's reaction. This was the fishman he knew, not a weak mermaid like Odahime. Aaron's face was sinister, and he raised his right hand to suppress the noise around him. Ha 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 ha, what a ridiculous statement, fish people are the strongest. Yeah? Karen pretended to pick his ears and dismissed Aaron's words. He didn't bother to explain anything, because he knew that the best way to reason with these people was to let them lie down and listen to you. Oh, it's so sad, a bunch of garbage living in fantasy. Since you are not convinced, let's go together. There is someone waiting for me, I'm in a hurry. The surrounding atmosphere solidified instantly, and Karen's words were like a thorn, piercing into the hearts of every fishman. How dare you, a human being, say that? Aaron roared angrily, exuding a strong sense of threat. Then he exerted force and appeared in front of Karen in an instant, and then took action unceremoniously. Emloculent chain choke. There was a killing intent in Karen's eyes. He didn't plan to use iron this time like he did against Jinbei. A normal punch. That's right, and he can't move in the sea after eating the devil fruit. Along with a harsh sound of wind, Karen's fist fell like thunder and penetrated Hody's body. Hody Jones accelerated violently and fled to the rear, but Karen would let him get his wish, and his little patience had been exhausted. He couldn't understand why Karen remained calm and composed in such a powerful current even though he was a devil fruit user. Karen shook his head, slowly walked towards Hody Jones, and showed a bright smile. A serious punch. I don't like the look in your eyes, so I'll just ask you to die. How is this possible? Why do mere humans have such terrifying power? Boring. Hody Jones froze on the spot, his face full of disbelief. Aaron is the most powerful being in Fishman Street besides Tiger and Jinbei, but he was knocked away by Karen after just one encounter. Advertisement Karen was calm and collected in the seawater, looking at Hody Jones with interest. A fish man with 8 arms rushed out of the crowd, anger and shock intertwined on his face. Murloc karate hitting the water. The surrounding Murlocs were stunned for a moment, looking at each other in disbelief at the scene in front of them. So, he anxiously shouted to the surrounding fishmen. Come together, he is a devil fruit user. Don't be afraid of him. Use fishman karate to break the bubble on him. The seawater had no effect on him at all. Yes, don't be afraid. He is alone. If we swarm him, he will definitely not be our opponent. Karen did not speak, but approached him step by step. His smile was still bright, but in Hody's eyes, it was like the arrival of Shinigami. Because he was in the water, Karen's voice was a little unclear. In the plot, he was the one who made the local residents trample on the portrait of Princess Odahime. It's been here for too long, will Dalika be worried? Torrents hit Karen's body one after another. Soon, the bubble membrane wrapping Karen's body was broken, and the seawater instantly submerged Karen's body. Being stared at by Karen, Hody Jones only felt that he was being stared at by Poseidon. The intense fear made his legs tremble uncontrollably. At this moment of life and death, he suddenly thought of what happened to Karen in the square. One scene. The fishmen who were watching seemed to have woken up from a dream, and they all responded to Hody's call and gathered together to form a circle. But to everyone's expectation, Karen did not lose his powers like other devil fruit users. With a boom, Aaron's body was like a cannonball, and he was instantly knocked away by Karen. He hit the wall behind him heavily, making a loud noise, and the wall behind him collapsed. Everyone come together, you actually killed Jones? He didn't intend to let go of the fishmen present. Maybe there were some fishmen among them who were like Zauba and could change their evil views on humans, but Karen didn't have time to identify them. Hody looked at the fist on his chest, his consciousness gradually blurred, and his heart was filled with regret and unwillingness. He is Hody's friend named Icarus Mushi. Don't be sad, because you will meet him soon. Hody Jones retreated in panic, his heart filled with uneasiness and fear. How is it possible? Aren't you a devil fruit user? Why didn't you lose your powers? Chapter 118 Fisher Tiger advertisement. On the other side, Jinbei came to the vendor with a group of guards. Where's Karen? The shopkeeper grabbed Jinbei's hand and said anxiously. He was taken away by Hody Jones. Go and have a look. He might have been killed by now. That be asterisk 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 D. Jones doesn't care about the princess's orders. Where were they taken? Jinbei was also anxious. Fishman Street. The sweat on Jinbei's body instantly wetted his clothes, and he cursed in his heart at this moment. Damn Jones, He actually brought that evil star to Fishman Street. Didn't he want to destroy the fishmen? He was also from Fishman Street, so he knew exactly who lived there. The key to arrogance, and arrogance is an extreme dislike of human beings. Damn it, let's go. By the time Jinbei arrived at Fishman Street, the scene had become a mess. Various murlocs fell to the ground, not knowing whether to live or die. Karen's attack was so ruthless that basically no murloc could speak. When Jinbei saw this scene, he felt his heart bleeding. These are all his compatriots. Damn, how dare he? Devil, you are the devil. At this time, the frightened sound of a fishman reached Jinbei's ears. He quickly accelerated his pace and swam towards the location of the sound. When Jinbei swam to the source of the sound, he saw an octopus man huddled in the corner, trembling all over and with fear in his eyes. Karen was standing next to him, the Tiang Feng in his hand dripping with blood, which made people feel frightened. Karen! Jinbei shouted angrily. Stop, Jinbei! Karen turned around and looked at Jinbei calmly with her scarlet eyes. Please stop. Jinbei quickly came between Karen and the octopus fishman. What? Are you going to attack me? Karen said lightly. Don't dare, you are a friend of Fishman Island, I'm sorry that this happened. Jinbei calmed down his anger and bowed to apologize. Advertisement. Although he was angry, he did not hate Karen because he understood that it was not Karen's fault, it was Hody Jones who took the initiative to cause trouble. When the octopus man saw Jinbei coming, the fear on his face receded a lot, and he began to accuse Karen of his evil deeds. Jinbei. He is a devil. He has killed many fishmen. We cannot let him go. Shut up. Mr. Karen is a friend of Princess Odahime and the most distinguished guest of Fishman Island. Jinbei stared at the octopus fishman, so frightened that he didn't dare to say another word. Karen also understood that this sentence was not just for the octopus fishman, but also for himself. Jinbei's meaning was obvious. Since he was a friend of the Fishman Island, he had to give Odahime some face. So, Karen shook the zangfeng hard, cleaned up the bloodstains on it, and then put the sword back into its scabbard. Let's go. I hope I won't meet a blind guy next time. Master Karen, I will go out with you. Jinbei walked up to Karen and made a gesture of invitation. Are you afraid that I will turn back halfway? Karen rolled his eyes and said softly, lead the way. Okay, the bubble wrap on your body has fallen off? Jinbei finally noticed something was wrong with Karen, and he exclaimed. You are not a devil fruit user. Previously in the square, he had also seen Karen using Advertising Master, and knew that Karen had the ability to make people cooperate with him. He thought that Karen was a devil fruit user, but now it seems that he is not. Karen was stunned, patted his head lightly, then came to Jinbei and grabbed his arm. Suddenly he seemed to be unable to stand still, as if his whole body had lost all strength. At the same time, he spoke plausibly. Ah, I'm so powerless, take me up quickly. Jinbei's mouth twitched slightly, resisting the urge to throw Karen out, and complained in his heart. I really want to hit someone, don't you think it's too late now? Ahem, I'll take Master Karen back first, and you can take the surviving fishmen to the hospital for treatment. V=_= After Jinbei gave instructions to the men around him, he took Karen and swam towards the coral hills. A group of guards were left looking at each other. Is the matter resolved? When the shop owner saw Jinbei coming back with Karen, his heart dropped. It's solved, thanks to Jinbei, otherwise I might not be able to come back. Karen had a scared look on his face when he said this, as if he had just encountered something very scary in Fishman Street. The shop owner smiled and said, haha, that's right, those guys in Fishman Street are afraid of Jinbei and Tiger. I would say you are still too impulsive and don't pay attention to that guy Jones. You are right, I have learned a lesson. Advertisement. Karen really felt that she shouldn't pay attention to Hody Jones, because it was a waste of time, and he also revealed in front of Jinbei that he was not a devil fruit user. Although being exposed or not has little impact on him. Okay, have you made your choice? Karen asked Delika. Delika rolled her eyes. It's good, I'll wait for you. Haha, I'm sorry, let's go then. Karen smiled awkwardly and then left with Delika. After sending Delika back to her residence, Karen returned to Coral Hill with Jinbei. Along the way, neither of them spoke, and the atmosphere seemed a bit solemn. Finally, Karen broke the silence. He looked at Jinbei and asked seriously. Do you think what I did in Fishman Street went too far? Jinbei lowered his head and denied. I dare not. I don't dare, I just think it is. Actually I am here for your Fishman Island. You should know that whether it is the princess, the king, or Tiger, they have all been working quietly to make Fishman Island better. But right now, Fishman Street has become a place where fish and humans can make friends. Hindered. Karen said earnestly. Fishman Street was originally established by the king to rescue orphans, but what has become of Fishman Street now? Everyone is a cancer, a scum, and they are all extreme racists. Sometimes it is like this, if you want to make progress, you have to try to give up something else. Looking at Jinbei who was thinking, Karen continued. Forget it, you can't understand it anyway, help me find a hotel. Yes, Lord Cullen, Holy Land, Marie Joya. This is the headquarters of the world government and the residence of the celestial dragons. Deep in the luxurious palace, a red-skinned fishman was locked in a dark cell. His body was covered with dense wounds. These wounds had different shapes, some looked like knife marks, some looked like arrow wounds, and some looked like they had been burned by fire. Every wound hurt, making him unbearable. The most serious thing was that red blood continued to overflow from his body, and soon dyed the ground beneath him red. His name is Fisher Tiger. Chapter 119 Shiarli's Divination. Advertisement. Underwater world, Fishman Island. A huge pirate ship docked slowly on the island, with a black and white skull flag hanging on it. The skull was smiling, and in the middle, a crescent-shaped beard was particularly eye-catching. Finally arrived at Fishman Island. Standing at the bow was a tall, lean, muscular man with blonde hair like a pineapple. He stretched out and took the lead in jumping from the bow to land. He is Marco, the captain of the Whitebeard Pirates. Standing behind him was a tall, dark-skinned man with two curved black beards, a dark blue top hat, and a sword scabbard on each side of his belt. Foil, Bista, captain of the 5th Division of the Whitebeard Pirates. Dad values Fishman Island very much. Bista always had a smile on her face. Ha ha ha, of course, otherwise Dad wouldn't have sent us to here. After all, this is the only road to the new world. Bringing this place into the sphere of influence of our Whitebeard Pirates is crucial to our future. That's right. Okay, let's take over this place quickly. I'm still anxious to go back and exercise. Margao stretched himself, not caring about the difficulty of the task at all. After all, he was the right-hand man of the Whitebeard Pirates. What are you going to do? Just use force to conquer them. The fishmen here are not so easy to deal with. After all, this is the bottom of the sea. Bista smiled slightly, followed Marco off the boat, and stepped onto the land of Fishman Island. Be polite first and then fight. Communicate with the king here first. It is best to contact them in a peaceful way. Marco thought for a moment and said slowly, "This is what Dad meant. After all, we are not here to conquer, but to cooperate. Boys, let's go." Yes. Just as they were about to go deep into the island, a group of fishmen suddenly appeared in front of them. They looked solemn and held weapons in their hands. They were obviously wary of the arrival of these two pirates. Pirate? The leading fishman immediately aimed his trident at Marco and Bista, as well as a group of pirates behind them. Don't be nervous, we are from the Whitebeard Pirates, you should have heard of this name. Marco stopped the pirates who wanted to show off their weapons, and smiled at the leader of the fishmen. We hope to establish friendship with the Fishman Island relationship to protect the safety of this place. Advertisement. The leader of the fishmen was extremely angry and laughed back. It's ridiculous, the Fishman Island does not need garbage pirates to protect it, we can protect our own island. Really? Marco was not angry, but looked at the fishman in front of him and laughed. Suddenly, his figure suddenly disappeared and reappeared behind the leader of the fishman. Blue flames condensed from Marco's fingertips and approached the neck of the leader of the fishman. See, you can't protect Fishman Island. A demonic voice came from behind the fishman, and he felt the threat of death. Trash. Trash pirate, you can kill me if you can. Marco chuckled, and then, a huge blue wing appeared on his back. Then, these wings began to disperse and turn into individual feathers, which instantly landed on the eyebrows of all the fishmen. The speed was so fast that these fishmen had no time to react. Are you sure? Are you sure? Coupled with the 2 years in Donghai, he began to integrate more and more into the world, so his goals gradually change. So it's better to leave the matter of saving Fishman Island to Wang Lufei. How is that possible? I have no interest in doing such boring things. At most, he can only find ways to change the fate of a few people. Shirley also held a bubble pipe in her hand. Her manners were dignified and elegant, mature and temperamental, and her proud breasts gave Karen a great impact. Maybe, but right now I just want a cup of coffee. After all, he is the one destined to save the world in the future. Karen frowned slightly, expressing her doubts. Karen cursed in his heart. After successfully taking revenge, the hard work in his heart gradually cooled down. Some of them are half human and half beast, some are tall, some are very small, and they have white wings behind them. Ordinary people can also change the world. Every small decision may lead to huge changes, especially when you have so many friends around you. Shirley smiled slightly and said gently. Looking back on the heroic words he made when he first came into this world, he has indeed changed a lot. Advertisement. The sky is bright, a kind of brightness that is different from that of Fishman Island. Although I have never been to the outside world, I am sure that they are really bathing in the sun. They are all happy and laughing. Karen didn't want to talk about this and her tone was perfunctory. He didn't want to be involved in the future of Fishman Island, nor did he want to take on that kind of responsibility. Now his goal is very simple, to make himself stronger, then grow up with Zepha in the marine, grow up with Uda, and finally find someone to marry and live a stable life. I'm very sure, because my fortune-telling has never been wrong. Okay, distinguished guest. Because I saw you and Her Majesty Odahime on a golden island together. There were many people around you, no, not just humans, fishmen and mermaids, but there were also some races that I had never seen before. Now he just wants to cherish every moment with his friends and enjoy the tranquility brought by this blue ocean. His previous idea was to enjoy everything after reaching the top, but now, he found that enjoying life itself is a goal, rather than overlooking everything alone on the peak. Such as Zephyr, such as Rosanandi. That's right. Shirley nodded seriously, that's what the divination says. Karen is sitting in the mermaid cafe, opposite him is the mermaid Shirley. And I don't think you are an ordinary person. Maybe you don't have this idea now, but the tide of fate often pushes you in unknown directions. So why do you think it's me? I just want to become strong and protect the people I care about, Karen finally said, with a firm tone. I'm just an ordinary person, I just want to live my own life. Shirley continued, as if she had already fallen into longing for the future of Fishman Island. The meaning of the journey is not the destination but the scenery along the way. He began to appreciate the beauty of the ocean and the sincere people. In the future, there will be many humans and other races on Fishman Island. They are all very friendly, and both fishmen and fishmen are also very happy. This is a very salty fish, but it is also a very comfortable life. Karen was silent, because he knew that Shirley's divination predictions were 100% accurate, and the future was likely to develop in the direction of Shirley's description. So you mean that I will lead Fishman Island to new heights in the future? The smile on Shirley's face became brighter and brighter, and she told Karen the scenes of her divination with relish. Chapter 120 The Targeted Fishman Island Advertisement. Fishman Island, Dragon Palace. How about our proposal? Marco sat to the left of Neptune, and next to him was Beasta. You said you were here to protect our Fishman Island? Odahime chuckled. But I don't think there is any potential threat to Fishman Island. Your Highness, you should understand, there have been more and more pirates coming to Fishman Island in recent years. Maybe you can handle it now, but what if there is something you can't handle? Odahime was unmoved and continued. I have heard the name of the Whitebeard Pirates, and I also know that the Whitebeard Pirates are not a cruel pirate group. She first affirmed the strength of the Whitebeard Pirates, and then changed the subject. But our Fishman Island is a member of the world government, and it is impossible to cooperate with the pirates. Beasta couldn't help but interjected. Who will admit it? Although the world government recognizes the status of Fishman Island as a franchise country, it actually ignores you. You have always relied on your own strength to resist the pirates. Attack. Once Fishman Island encounters a real crisis, the world government will never lend a helping hand. He paused and then said, Wake up, Your Highness. Not only will those celestial dragons wearing bubble hoods not care about you, but they will offer high-priced rewards to capture the mermaid. This is the reality. Marco took over Beasta's words and said in a low and firm tone. When you were on Fishman Island, you should have seen many pirates. They are not as friendly as us, they have no mercy. Not only that, there are more and more speculators coming to Fishman Island, right? Otherwise, you don't have to send guards to guard the entrance day and night. He looked around and continued. In the outside world, almost everyone regards Murlocs as inferior creatures. This concept has long been deeply rooted in people's hearts. Do you think that in such an environment, Murlocs can achieve true equality and freedom? Almost everyone knows that the Tianlong people bid up to 7,000 W Baileys for a female fishman. This price can make many people drop everything and come to Fishman Island to gamble. If they succeed, they will not have to worry about food and clothing for the rest of their lives. This is what you can count on, world government. Odahime's face turned pale instantly, and her knowledge told her that the two people in front of her were not lying, and everything they described was true. But you are pirates. Marco's eyes were firm and sharp. He stared at Odahime and said slowly. If a pirate can protect Fishman Island, then it doesn't matter whether he is a thief or not. Advertisement. This sentence hit Odahime's heart like a heavy hammer, leaving her unable to refute. Marco continued. We, the Whitebeard Pirates, are not the kind of villains who burn, kill and loot. We have our own beliefs and principles. Odahime was silent for a moment, and her heart began to waver. Marine. Neptune thought of Karen who came here the day before yesterday, and then he shook his head. Although Karen is very powerful, he is by no means Whitebeard's opponent. In other words, in this era, no one is Whitebeard's opponent. Hearing this, a smile suddenly appeared on Marco's face, and then he replied decisively. In order to prevent the Big Mom pirates from running amok on Fishman Island and causing the Fishman Island to become dilapidated, Dad even chose to duel with the Big Mom pirates on the sea. But there is not only one entrance to Fishman Island, but many, some of which he himself is not aware of, so there are always some fish that slip through the net and come to Fishman Island to wreak havoc, which also deepens the Murlocs and mermaids' hatred of human beings. Bias. To be honest, the current situation on Fishman Island is indeed very bad. Neptune's eyes widened, his face full of disbelief, and the wine glass in his hand almost dropped to the ground. Or you can try to ask Marine for help, but will Marine send someone? In fact, the reputation of the Whitebeard Pirates has always been very good in the New World. Although they are pirates, they have not done anything to massacre the island or persecute the people. Fishman Island is a very beautiful place, and most of the mermaids there are very naive. They don't know how to distinguish between good and bad in the outside world. Recently, many mermaids have been coaxed to land. Neptune knows very well what kind of life they will face. In fact, Dad is very important to Fishman Island. Originally, he should have come with us, but he heard that the Big Mom pirates, who are also the Emperor of the Sea, wanted to bring Fishman Island under her command, so he stopped the Big Mom pirates personally. Although she has been committed to solving problems through peaceful means, the reality is so cruel. Since the death of One Piece Roger, the Great Pirate Age has begun. More and more pirates have flocked to the New World. This is simply a nightmare for Fishman Island. What? Marco spoke for a long time, and after he finished speaking, the audience fell silent. Then, he shook his head and expressed that he could not accept this answer. Huh? Who is looking for me? Advertisement. This is the fact, and this is what Dad meant. Although I don't quite understand the reason, as sons, we will never go against Dad's wishes. You said the Big Mom pirates are targeting Fishman Island? Marco told Neptune all the information he knew, and he believed that Neptune would make the most correct judgment. Marco is very confident. He clearly understands that Marine will not put too much effort into the underwater world for the fishmen. For the development of Fishman Island, he could not prevent the communication between fish people and the outside world. All he could do was to arrange a group of guards at the entrance of Fishman Island to check the customs clearance documents of outsiders. However, Marco still looked calm and explained in a firm and serious tone. You should understand that the Big Mom pirates have this ability. Yes, it is said that she likes a kind of dessert on Fishman Island and wants to open a dessert factory on Fishman Island. Neptune's voice was a little hoarse because he knew the reputation of the Big Mom pirates and also knew that Sherlock Linlin was once a member of the Rocks Pirates and was the true leader of the Rocks Pirates. He quickly picked up the wine glass and took a swig of wine to calm his inner shock. There are no conditions, everything we do is free. In fact, Fishman Island has no choice at all, because neither Dad nor Sherlock Linlin will let Neptune choose. It just depends on who will win the battle on the sea. He believed that the winner would be his father, so all he did was give notice. How can there be such a good thing in this world? At this moment, Purton finally asked, "What are your conditions?" Neptune frowned, filled with doubts. At this moment, a lazy voice came from outside the Dragon Palace gate. Compared to Whitebeard, she is more cruel and moody. Whitebeard. Why would he do this? Chapter 121 God avoids, still God avoids. Advertisement. The one who spoke was naturally Karen. Today was his third day on Fishman Island. He had almost done all the shopping he needed to do. He came to Ryugu Palace today to say goodbye to Odahime and Neptune. As the most distinguished guest of Fishman Island, he was not prevented from coming to the palace. Karen. Odahime stood up, her voice as sweet as clear seawater. Your Highness Odahime, King Neptune. Karen walked to the center of the hall and bowed slightly to Odahime and Neptune. Ha ha ha, no need to salute, please sit down. How are Major General Karen's days at Fishman Island going? Neptune motioned for Karen to sit on his right, and then waved, and a carp and mermaid maid poured wine for him. Don't you know how you are doing if you are still pretending here? 2 hours after Karen left Fishman Street, Neptune ordered the Fishman Street to be closed. This means that Neptune is paying attention to it all the time. Karen's movements. Karen was not polite, sat down on the cushion, and took a sip. Very good, both the scenery and the food on Fishman Island impressed me deeply. I am gratified by your praise. Neptune responded with a smile. Are you Marine? At this time, Marco stood up and stared at Karen. Yes. Karen sighed inwardly. He recognized Brother Maul at a glance, but he didn't expect that the members of the Whitebeard Pirates were also here. He did remember that a few years after the Great Pirate Era began, the Whitebeard Pirates declared the world and added Fishman Island to their own territory. Fishman Island relied on Whitebeard's reputation to protect it from the pirates' persecution. But I didn't expect that it would be today, let alone that I would meet them. But now that he has met, he is no longer afraid. Although he is alone, he has heard outside the door that Whitebeard has not come yet. Marco asked, why is Marine here? Does Marine still need to report to the pirates when he comes here? Karen replied lightly, and the atmosphere instantly became tense. Returning to Marine headquarters, he experienced 3 battles in total, one of which was against Axel, crushing him. The other match was with Rayleigh, and we lost. The third game was the battle with Jinbei on Fishman Island. At this time, Jinbei did not follow Fisher Tiger to form the Sun Pirates, so his strength was far from the level of Shichibukai. Now meeting Marco, the deputy of the 4 emperors, the desire to fight in his heart was instantly ignited. So the tone of speaking was unceremonious. Is this what Fishman Island relies on? It turns out you have already contacted Marine. Advertisement. Marco obviously misunderstood something, and Karen didn't bother to explain. He poured another glass of wine and drank it in one gulp. As pirates, you should know what to do when facing Marine. Then Karen stood up and said in a deep voice to Neptune, Your Majesty the King, please forgive me for being rude. My duty as a Marine is to catch pirates. When I meet these 2 guys today, I will definitely not let them go. Huh? Marco was shocked. It was true that they were pirates, but they were the Whitebeard Pirates. The fact that the young Marine in front of him actually wanted to capture them made him feel insulted. Neptune also quickly stopped and said, Karen, they are from the Whitebeard Pirates. Don't you know the terror of Whitebeard? He didn't think Karen had the strength to defeat Marco and Beasta. Mainly because Karen is too young. I know, but I'm Marine. Karen stood up and walked slowly to the door, then said lightly to Marco, Let's go, Pineapple Head. You are the Pineapple Head. Marco's mouth twitched and he retorted loudly. Karen drew out his hidden front and stood opposite Marco and Bista. It turned out to be a swordsman. Bista pulled out the two foil swords from his waist, with a strong fighting spirit in his eyes. You two come together. Karen's eyes were cold. That arrogant brat, Marco, leave him to me. I want him to understand that not everyone in the Whitebeard Pirates can succeed. Bista's voice was low and full of fighting intent, and his foil sword shone coldly in the sunlight. Be careful, Bista, I feel like this kid is not simple. Marco reminded as he stood aside. Don't worry, I will teach this kid a lesson. A confident smile appeared on Bista's lips, and then he slowly walked towards Karen. As the strongest swordsman of the Whitebeard Pirates, his pride does not allow him to fight 2 against 1. Very good, let me see your strength, Karen said calmly. Advertisement Bista did not answer, and suddenly swung out the foil sword in his hand. The foil sword drew a graceful arc in the air, like dancing petals, and approached Karen with unparalleled sharpness. There was a harsh sound of breaking wind in the air instantly, as if even time had frozen. Two-blade style Hua Fen. Well done. Karen roared excitedly, and his armed color instantly wrapped around Zhang Feng's sword. God avoids. The two swords intersected, a deafening metal collision sounded, and the turbulent airwaves tore the surrounding air apart, forming a strong storm. Marco stood aside, the light in his eyes flashing. He knew that Bista's swordsmanship was among the best in the New World, and as a young marine, it was obviously not easy for Karen to compete with him. But why does this move seem familiar? He seems to have heard it somewhere. This impolite boy is really interesting, he commented secretly, and his impression of Karen had changed. Not bad, kid. The moment Bista and Karen's attacks collided, he put away his inner contempt. Then he changed his offensive, and a new confrontation started instantly. Two-blade style Hanaying. God avoids. Sword style Wayu. God avoids. Two sword style Rose dances wildly. God avoids. Bista couldn't stand it any longer. G know how to do this. God avoids. In fact, it's not Karen's fault. The main reason is that he has studied with Shimotsuki Koshiro in Shimotsuki village for so long. He always feels that those moves are too fancy and are not as good as his own ordinary strikes. Anyway, with the blessing of his unparalleled skills next, any move will increase the bonus by 3 to 5 times. Therefore, instead of practicing those fancy sword moves, it is better to use the limited time to strengthen your body and strengthen your arm domineering energy. For him, as long as his strength is strong enough and his speed is fast enough, even an ordinary blow can have astonishing power. This is also the reason why Shimotsuki Koshiro always dislikes him, because in his opinion, Karen is not a real swordsman at all. He only knows the common skills of a swordsman, chopping, stabbing, and slashing. His sword energy was only released because he was fast enough and powerful enough. But he was like this. In the swordsmanship competition, Koshiro actually lost. Chapter 122 Help Me advertisement. As time continued to pass, the sound of the clash of swords was heard endlessly. Every confrontation was accompanied by sparks flying and the crisp sound of metal hitting. The figures of Bista and Karen are intertwined, and their movements are as elegant and powerful as dance. However, despite Bista's superb swordsmanship, Karen responded to his attacks in an almost callous manner. From beginning to end, Marco did not take action, but watched the battle between the two people carefully from the sidelines. His eyes were focused and sharp, as if he was analyzing every detail and looking for flaws. Gradually, his brows tightened, and he began to feel a little worried in his heart. He could see that Bista was no longer a match for Karen. At the beginning, Bista could still fight Karen with his exquisite sword moves. But as time went by, he could clearly feel that Bista's physical strength was gradually exhausted. His breathing became rapid, and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. Looking at Karen on the opposite side, he seems to be getting more courageous as he fights. His body momentum became more and more brave, and his eyes shone with determination. His movements are smooth and natural, and each sword carries a powerful force that makes people marvel. Karen is like a robot with no sense of fatigue, calm, and he can respond quickly no matter what kind of attack he faces. This is actually the function of top-level life return, which allows Karen to maintain the best condition at all times, almost tirelessly. In this state, his reaction speed and strength are improved to a level beyond the reach of ordinary people. Each of Bista's attacks became weaker and weaker, although he still refused to give up and fought with all his strength. As time went by, his sword power became weaker and weaker, and he seemed a little powerless. This is impossible. This kid obviously doesn't have advanced swordsmanship, but every time he attacks, there is no excess power leaked out. He is simply a natural fighting machine. Bista cursed inwardly and tried to adjust her breathing. Finally, he made a mistake and the sword power weakened slightly. Karen seized the opportunity and struck hard, approaching Bista's side. Bista's heart tightened, and he quickly turned sideways to avoid it, but his shoulder was still scratched by the blade, and blood immediately flowed out. There is no suspense in this battle. Marco sighed secretly in his heart. Advertisement. Seeing Karen's offensive getting stronger and stronger, Marco understood that if he didn't take action, Beasta would probably lose. Marco quickly flashed in front of Beasta like a bolt of lightning, blocking Karen's fierce attack at an astonishing speed. Beasta, you have tried your best, now it is my turn to take over this battle, Marco said in a low voice. Although Beasta was unwilling, he still gritted his teeth, nodded, and then slowly backed away. He knew that he had tried his best, but in the face of Karen's strong strength and tenacious fighting spirit, he felt a little powerless. Beasta retreated behind Marco and stared at Karen, secretly making up his mind that after returning to the ship, he could no longer study swordsmanship, but should also pay attention to his own training and improve his physical fitness. What? Do you want 2 against 1? Karen looked at the 2 people in front of him contemptuously, with a disdainful smile hanging on the corner of his mouth. Karen, I admit that you are very strong and Beasta is no match for you, but please don't underestimate our Whitebeard pirates. With that said, Marco shouted, spread his wings, and rushed towards Karen like a burning meteor. His fist flashed with blazing flames and he swung towards Karen with great power. Karen sneered and turned his body slightly to one side, easily dodging Marco's attack. What I'm waiting for is for you to use your beast form. Under Marco's shocked gaze, Karen's aura suddenly changed. He felt like he had become a chopping block, ready to be slaughtered. His soul was trembling. It was a kind of pressure that he could not resist. He felt that he was no longer facing humans, but his natural enemies. His father, Whitebeard, had never felt this kind of coercion. Could it be that Cullen was stronger than his father? But is this possible? Marco quickly shook his head, forcing himself not to think about this. How is this possible? Did you just hide your strength? Marco's voice was hoarse. He tried hard to stay calm, but the nervousness in his tone could not be concealed. Karen just stood there quietly, his every movement and every breath carried unparalleled pressure, making Marco feel unprecedented pressure. This is the gourmet effect. This kind of pressure does not come from the gap in power or status, but from a kind of fear and awe deep in the heart. Advertisement. With the blessing of the gourmet effect, no matter what kind of animal devil fruit it is a precious ingredient for Karen. He treats all ingredients equally. Karen's eyes flashed with greed, as if he was looking at a rare treasure. Think about it slowly. Immediately afterwards, the Zhangfang in Karen's hand instantly burst out with an astonishing force, and the sword was like lightning, approaching Marco. God avoids. It was still a divine dodge, which was an ordinary slash. Marco had seen this move countless times during the duel between Karen and Beasta. But when he faced Karen, he felt as if a pair of invisible hands were strangling his throat. He didn't know how to resist. Years of combat experience and combat reactions prevented him from standing there in a daze. Although his heart was filled with fear and uneasiness, Marco's body still reacted quickly, driven by instinct. He dodged sideways with difficulty, but the sword blade still scratched his chest, blood splattered out, and severe pain hit him instantly. Beasta felt as if he had seen a ghost. He couldn't help shouting, Marco, what are you doing? He could not feel the coercion emanating from Karen. From his perspective, Marco was at a loss when faced with Karen's attack, like an intern who had just entered the battlefield. In just one encounter, Marco was injured by Karen. He knew that Marco was an animal type, a phantom beast species, a bird fruit, and a phoenix form, and had extraordinary self-healing abilities. He also knew that Marco would never react this way when facing an enemy. Marco was in trouble and couldn't tell. He wanted to ask how Beasta had persisted for so long under Karen's offensive. God avoids. Karen's sword light struck again, without reservation. The hidden edge in his hand was swung like a ghost, and every sword contained a fatal threat. Under this kind of pressure, Marco had no intention of resisting. He was tired of dealing with it. The wounds on his body continued to increase, and the blood quickly stained his body red. The strange thing is that there are no wounds on his body. That was his self-healing ability running crazily, but the power of devil fruit comes from his own physical strength. Marco knew that when his physical strength was exhausted, death would be waiting for him. At this moment, facing the threat of death, he didn't want to think about whether 2 versus 1 was being honest, and immediately shouted for help to Beasta. Help me, Beasta. Chapter 123. Dark Fruit? Advertisement? Karen is actually so strong. Above the Dragon Palace, King Neptune looked at the battlefield with burning eyes, full of surprise and admiration. He knew very well how powerful Karen was. He had heard Jinbei mention that Karen could easily defeat him. He also knew that Karen had single-handedly defeated the entire Fishman Street in Fishman Street. However, when he saw that Karen alone could easily suppress the 2 captains of the Whitebeard pirates, he truly realized how terrifying Karen's strength was. Odahime on the side was also shocked. She couldn't help but sigh. Even if it is called the Age of Great Pirates, Marine is still the master of this ocean. Neptune nodded sadly and said helplessly, yes, it is no accident that humans have been able to dominate the land for so long. Their power is indeed amazing. Just these few people have the ability to destroy Fishman Island. Your Majesty, we also have Fishman Island. Odahime didn't finish her words. This was related to the secret of Fishman Island. But that's just a legend. The legend is not necessarily false. I have always believed it. Damn brat, how can you be so strong? Beasta struggled to resist Karen's strong attack, while not forgetting to care about Marco, who was obviously in a bad state. Marco, how are you? Did you really not feel the pressure on him? There were dense beads of sweat on Marco's face, and his voice was trembling when he spoke. Beasta stared closely at Karen. He really couldn't feel the pressure, Marco said, but the sweat on Marco's face was not fake. Is this the top conquerors? When he was young, he once faced One Piece Roger. Although his father was in front of him to protect them, they still more or less felt the pressure from Roger, the strongest conquerors. He will never forget that kind of power in his life. I heard from my dad that this kind of precise conquerors requires extremely strong control skills. Even if you are as powerful as Roger when using conquerors, your power will overflow. Because this kind of power does not distinguish between friend and foe, it needs to be controlled by oneself. But the power used by the young marine kid in front of him could completely block his own feelings, and he could only use it on Marco. Is this possible? So this is definitely not Conqueror's power. Could it be the power of devil fruit? Beasta has never eaten a devil fruit. He understands that the power of devil fruit requires continuous development. This power comes from the user's own strength. This makes even more sense, because it makes no sense for Karen to have this power and not use it for herself. Advertisement unless he looks down on himself. This is impossible. In the previous duel with Karen, although Karen performed very easily, Beasta could see that Karen had used all his strength. Thinking of Marco's confident attitude in taking over the duel between himself and Karen, that is to say, Marco did not feel this way before the battle. He began to think carefully about the difference between himself and Marco, and the scenes before and after the battle with Marco. The answer is obvious, that is Marco using the power of the devil fruit. Beasta's eyes gradually brightened, and he reminded Marco loudly. Release the power of the devil fruit quickly. His voice was loud. Although Marco didn't know what Beasta had discovered, years of tacit understanding and trust made him immediately do what Beasta said. It directly removes the power of the devil fruit. Sure enough, as soon as it was lifted, the soul pressure exerted on him disappeared instantly. His thinking gradually became more active. Why is this happening? Bah! Beasta deflected another attack from Karen and noticed that Marco had returned to normal. His face was gloomy and he murmured. As expected, this guy has a way to target people with devil fruit abilities. I just don't know if this is a new weapon developed by Marine, or is it his own special ability? If everyone in Marine, Beasta's gloomy face could squeeze out water. Marco had obviously thought of this conjecture, and his expression was equally ugly. Because even he felt afraid in the face of that kind of coercion. If he were an ordinary devil fruit user, he would be at the mercy of someone like Karen. You must know that the Whitebeard pirates have quite a few people with abilities. Even Whitebeard himself is a devil fruit user. Marco could only try his best to think positively. Maybe the situation was not as bad as he thought. Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration. I came up with a relatively reliable guess. That was a devil fruit illustrated book he had seen before. Logia dark fruit. There is no detailed explanation about him above. Advertisement. There is only one sentence. He can greatly restrain devil fruit users. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that what he guessed was true, so he exclaimed. Are you a user with the dark fruit ability? Karen was speechless. He thought of the curly black-haired man in his memory who had a rugged appearance, lush body hair, and several missing teeth. Blackbeard, Marshall D. Teach. No, bro, I'm so handsome, how could I be a user with the ability of the dark fruit? Karen knew that devil fruits would choose their owners. Thinking that Marco compared him to Blackbeard, the look he looked at Marco became even more dangerous. I told you, think about it yourself. As he spoke, the Zhangfeng in his hand was like a giant dragon, smashing towards Marco with great pressure. Marco was shocked. He felt a little uncomfortable without using devil fruit, but he really didn't want to face the pressure from the soul. He raised his arms at the moment, and the black-armed color instantly wrapped around him. As soon as they met, he was knocked away by Karen's huge power. His body drew an arc in the air and hit the rocks nearby, making a violent collision. The dust was flying, and Marco climbed up with difficulty, with a wry smile on his lips. It has been many years since I fought with physical strength. In the past, he relied on his phoenix form and used it as Logia. Are you okay? Beasta appeared in front of Marco and looked at Karen warily. Fine. Marco coughed lightly and spit out a mouthful of blood. Although he did not use the power of the devil fruit, the body blessed by the animal system still worked. This guy is simply a monster. Beasta sighed. After such a high-intensity battle, he didn't even take a breath. His control of power is too exquisite. If he doesn't show his true power, we may have to blame him here. Marco smiled bitterly and said, I really can't use my real power now. The pressure is too terrifying. Fortunately, you came with me this time. If it was that guy Chowzi. His tone was full of joy, and he had almost determined that Karen was the nemesis of devil fruit users. Because they came to Fishman Island, Whitebeard specially asked Marco and Beasta, who had never eaten a devil fruit, to perform the mission together. Unexpectedly, it actually came in handy, although it was not a shipwreck. Chapter 124 Who Bullies Whom? Advertisement. What should we do? What else can I do? I can only do it. Marco had no other choice. If he and Beasta were the only ones coming, he might choose to run away, but this time it was not just the two of them. There was also a ship of Whitebeard pirates at the port of Fisherman Island. Ordinary members of the group. They cannot give up their families, this is the iron rule of the Whitebeard pirates. Bulu Bulu, just when Marco and Beasta were about to go all out, an untimely call came from Karen. Karen frowned slightly and glanced at Marco and Beasta, who stopped attacking. After hesitating for a moment, he answered the call. Moxie, this is Karen. Karen, where are you now? There was a very dignified voice on the other end of the phone, from Marine Agent Fleet Admiral, Warring States. It's on Fishman Island. Karen was a little surprised. She didn't expect Zhang Wei to call him suddenly. Sure enough, I didn't expect that D Zephyr to let you go to such a dangerous place. What happened? Listen, Karen, leave Fishman Island right now. I received news that the Whitebeard pirates and Big Mom pirates are eyeing Fishman Island. Fishman Island is now very dangerous. Karen glanced at Marco and Beasta, who were facing a formidable enemy, and said calmly, Oh. Huh? Warring States frowned and heard Karen's disapproval. He felt that Karen couldn't let go and didn't want to retreat without a fight. So he quickly continued to admonish. Karen, I know you have just returned to the headquarters and want to fight a powerful opponent, but the Whitebeard pirates and the Big Mom pirates are both the kings of the New World, and they are not you. The level can be provoked. Really, but you seem to be too late. What? I have already faced them, but there is only the Whitebeard pirates here, not the Big Mom pirates. Warring States gritted his teeth and said loudly, Hold on, I'll send reinforcements right away. I guess. No need. What, have you been caught? Karen was speechless. She didn't expect that she was so weak in the Warring States. Advertisement, what are you thinking? They are already surrounded by me. Not only was Warring States not happy when he heard this, but he became even more angry. Karen, I'm not kidding you, leave now. He felt that Karen had lost his mind and gone crazy. That was the Whitebeard pirates. Even if he sent a general, he couldn't say that he would surround the Whitebeard pirates alone. What I said is true. Karen was also a little unhappy. He obviously had the upper hand, but Sang Guo kept letting him escape. What a big deal. Tell them yourself. After speaking to the phone bug, he shouted angrily to Marco. Hey, Pineapple Head. Marco looked up, a little confused. What? My elder brother has something to say to you, go on. With that said, Karen threw the phone bug towards Marco. The moment he threw it, Marco was still hesitating whether to catch it, but Beasta had already made a decision. He appeared beside Marco in an instant, pounced, and pinned Marco down. You must know that this is a battlefield, and Marine is the best at using this new type of bomb that they have never seen before. In addition, he was very wary of Karen's methods, so he felt that even if he made a mistake in judgment, he would not watch Marco lose his life due to carelessness. Pung, of course, this was not the sound of a bomb, but the sound of Beasta knocking Marco down to the ground. Marco was pinned down by Beasta, unable to move. Karen was really speechless when she saw this scene. She didn't expect that the other party would do such a coquettish thing. However, he understood that after all, no one would throw phone bugs at the enemy in battle, only bombs. For Marine, Karen is not just an extremely talented Marine. Me? Bullying Karen? Marco clenched his fists and met Karen's questioning gaze. Thinking back on the scene that had just happened, there was inevitably some fear in his heart, followed closely by anger. Karen. Warring States on the other side of the phone was as anxious as an ant on a hot pot. As early as 10 seconds ago, no matter how much he yelled, there was no response from the other party, which gave him a very bad premonition. Everyone beats the younger one to get older, but now that he has never beaten the younger one, the older one on the opposite side appears first. He felt a little aggrieved. Damn it, the opponent obviously had the advantage, but the boss of the opponent told him to be careful. Advertisement mud, have you ever seen such a cruel child? Marco could no longer control his angry emotions. He was like a scolding shrew with sharp language. Mad, the people of the Whitebeard pirates, please listen to me and be careful to Lousy. If anything happens to Karen, I will personally lead Marine to New World to ask for an explanation. These were the first words Marco heard when he got the phone bug. If something happened to Karen, Zephyr might really not be able to withstand such a blow, because he knew that it was Zephyr who personally agreed to go to Fishman Island for Karen. At the same time, he is a relative of Garp and Zfa's favorite apprentice. Then he coughed quietly and helped Marco up from the ground. Hey, Beasta, it doesn't look like a bomb. Beasta didn't speak or move, but waited another 3 or 4 seconds before getting up from Marco's body angrily. Warring States had met Uda, and he also knew that Zephyr had placed his trust in Uda and Karen. Isn't this bullying an honest person? TMD, Lousy and his friends were eating seafood and talking about something, and suddenly Marine called him out. Am I going too far? Warring States shouted angrily. Isn't it too much for a group of you to bully him? However, Marco underneath him was a little helpless and was the first to speak out. Warring States shouted anxiously for a while, and then he began to curse. Beasta had not yet felt the explosions coming from around him. Marco moved his wrist, then slowly came to the phone bug, hesitated for a moment and picked it up. Who is bullying whom? A full 7 or 8 seconds passed. Haha, the situation is urgent, child? Are all you marine kids like this? He is just a child? His pupils were flashing with blue flames. At this moment, he even forgot about fear, and only incomparable anger remained in his heart. It doesn't matter, it's not a bad thing to be careful. Not only did you get beaten up, but you were slandered by an old B*** D like you. Do you really think that our Whitebeard pirates are easy to mess with? I'll fight for you, Marine, Marco said angrily, don't go too far. Chapter 125 Developmental Period Advertisement Marine Headquarters, Warring States Office. Sengoku quickly called back to the adjutant who was about to summon Marine. He asked the other end of the phone, so, are you really okay? Karen rolled her eyes. More real than real gold. You surrounded the Whitebeard pirates by yourself? Marco and Bista, to be precise. Those are the captains of the 1st and 5th divisions of the Whitebeard pirates. Yes. When did your kid become so strong? I don't have time to explore this with you right now. There's still a duel waiting for me on the other side. Karen showed a kind smile to Marco and Bista and signaled them to wait a moment. The phone bug Sengoku was silent for 5 seconds. Just when Karen was about to hang up, Sengoku spoke again. Wait. You can't catch them yet. Karen was confused. Why, isn't it natural for Marine to catch pirates? They're different. What's the difference? They're members of the Whitebeard pirates. Karen raised her eyebrows in surprise. Why, are you afraid of Whitebeard? Oh, you don't understand. The situation in New World is very complicated, Warring States sighed and explained. After Roger's death, New World was divided between 3 pirate groups. They were all remnants of the Rocks pirates. The Whitebeard pirates, Edward Newgate, the Big Mom pirates, Charlotte Linlin, and the Beast pirates, Kaido. Most of the islands in the New World are occupied by them, and the people living there only recognize pirates and not Marines. The 3 major forces check and balance each other and have always maintained a relatively peaceful confrontation. If we, Marine, rashly start a war with the Whitebeard pirates, the world situation will inevitably be broken, and the world will most likely fall into chaos. At that time, civilians around the world will inevitably live in dire straits. This is a situation that we at Marine and the world government do not want to see. Karen nodded and said solemnly, then we just ignore them when we meet them? Of course not, it's just that we won't be so radical. It's better to let them bite each other, and then we Marine will slowly follow suit and eat away at their operations in New World bit by bit. And compared to the Big Mom pirates and Beasts pirates, the Whitebeard pirates are more docile. Okay. Karen shook his head helplessly, a little disappointed. It seemed that Marco and Bista could not be captured today. He thought of what Marco and Bista had to deal with when they came to Fishman Island, and reported him to Warring States. Advertisement, Whitebeard is not simple, he can see further than I thought. Warring States was a little emotional. Then what should we do now? Should we send Marine to guard Fishman Island? We can't just watch the pirates occupy this place. Sengoku was silent for a while before he said, I'm sorry, Karen, Marine can't send troops to guard there. Why is this? The problem still arises in the New World. The Big Mom pirates and the Beast pirates may acquiesce to the Whitebeard pirates occupying Fishman Island, but they will never let Marine guard it. Once they... Okay, I get it. Karen interrupted Sengoku directly, not wanting to hear Sengoku's explanation anymore. I didn't expect that as the overlord of the ocean, he would be so cautious and constrained in everything he did. Although I understand, I am still inevitably a little disappointed in my heart. Gaba. The phone bug was hung up by Karen. He sighed imperceptibly and glanced at Marco and Bista, who were standing aside muttering quietly, feeling a little uninterested. Consider them lucky. Karen put away his hidden sword, turned around and walked towards the Dragon Palace. Marco. Bista. Why did the person leave after making a phone call? He also looked like he had been hollowed out. The two looked at each other, let out a breath, and then looked in the direction of the Dragon Palace, both hesitant. This mission was undoubtedly a failure. Karen stroked her round belly, squeezed it with both hands, and her round belly instantly turned into 8-pack abs. Only by constantly eating meat can he replenish the energy he consumes, but mermaids rarely eat meat, which results in very little meat on the dinner table. The atmosphere at the scene was a bit awkward, with only the sounds of Karen eating and the merman moving around busily. He scratched the back of his head and said sheepishly, well, actually I'm still growing, so I eat a little more. Below him are Karen and Marco and Bista. Advertisement. A group of mermaid maids were in the hall, coming in and out, bringing new food for Karen. Karen set her sights on Marco and Bista opposite. The corner of Neptune's mouth twitched, and then he immediately gave the order, so a group of mermaid maids began to get busy again. His stomach was like a bottomless pit, filled with food, and next to them there was an empty plate that was taller than a person. Neptune was sitting on the throne at the highest point of the Dragon Palace. Next to him was Princess Odahime, who was pouring wine for him. Karen glanced at the high empty plate next to him. Even though he had developed a good temper, he was also a little embarrassed. Dragon Palace. It's really a bit. Haha, it's true that a hero comes out of a boy. I didn't expect Karen to like our fishmen's food so much. Apart, under the resentful gaze of the mermaid maid, Karen finally ended the half-hour-long meal. So he ate a little more. Karen explained. Haha, Neptune laughed awkwardly and continued. Major General Karen, don't be formal. If they are not full, I will tell them to continue. All kinds of large and small fruits and seafood were thrown into his mouth randomly. It's not that she doesn't know how to pour wine, but the scene below really shocked her. Haha. Why don't you talk? The wine overflowed and flowed to the ground, and Odahime put down the wine bottle in a panic. After getting his life back, he will get hungry easily, especially after the war. At this moment, Karen's voice came faintly. Neptune tried to break the awkward situation and told a joke. Thanks for the treat. At this time, Karen was like a beast that had been hungry for several days, transformed into a glutton, and was eating crazily. Marco avoided Karen's sight with some fear. Karen's eating reminded him of bad things. What are you waiting for? Aren't you going to protect Fishman Island? As the last piece of seafood was swallowed by Karen, he burped, somewhat unfinished. Beasta instantly protected the food in front of him. Wow.